Mr. Pop.
We soared away together with our wings spread. Just a schmuck who God really struck. Oh, what luck! Aim of a buck to the head.
Hello, Wastelanders! This is DJ Pony reporting to you live from this fine piece of pre-war broadcasting ass that I call home. And I do call it home, because while I disagree with many of the policies of my landlords here in 10 Pony Tower, this microphone helps me deliver the truth to more of you ponies than these rusty pipes could yell. You see, children, I know what it's like out there in the wastes. I've seen more than my fair share of the horrors that many of you face every day. This harsh life of ruin and radiation is a sad descent from the Equestria of days past. But it is the world we have, a world where we must make decisions of life or death on a daily basis, decisions that may not conform to the luxury of morality, and force us to confront at our very core what it means to do the right thing. It is for this very reason that I am beginning a new segment called Confessions of a Wasteland Pony. Here I will be talking with you, the average citizen of post-apocalyptia, so that we can hear your stories, celebrate your triumphs, learn from your mistakes, and above all, find out just how similar we really are. With me today is Battered Blade, an ex-raider. She's here to bring new insight into the world of one of the Wasteland's most prevalent parasites. Battered, thank you for being here.
It's no big deal.
Now, Battered, you have quite a unique story compared to the average Wasteland pony. Tell us about where you grew up.
Alright. I was born in what was once Ponyville. My mother was part of this gang of raiders called the Smile Squad.
The Smile Squad?
Yeah, thank Luna, they don't exist anymore. But before I was born, they controlled pretty much the whole area around Ponyville. They took on the name after being inspired by that billboard outside of town. Besides the normal raider shit of stealing, raping, and killing, the Smile Squad wanted to set themselves apart by cutting smiles into the cheeks of the victims. It was their signature, and also a way to mark their territory with the disfigured bodies of the dead. Bastards.
So your family had already been in the gang for a while by that point.
Oh yeah. If my mother ever did have a life before the gang, she sure didn't bother to tell me about it. She was probably just like me, born to some filly taking her first steps into adulthood. Which probably makes me a thoroughbred or some shit.
You've mentioned your mother, but did you ever know your father?
No, I didn't. The sitting leader of the gang usually gets free rein on the mayors too stupid or strung out on mentals to care. So, odds are it was whatever piece of work was wearing the crown at the time.
And you have no memory of him?
Luckily, the position had a very quick turnover rate. Just like so many of the other raided clans, they had the flawless system of kill the boss, become the boss. There must have been at least 3 of them before I got my cutie mark.
That's another thing that I think a lot of listeners would like to know more about. Do you mind describing your cutie mark?
It's fine. I thought you'd ask. For those of you out there that can't see this scarred and tattered flank, it's a picture of a jagged metal bar struck through a pony's leg. As horrifying as it may sound, it's pretty tame compared to some of the other raider marks out there. They say that cutie marks are supposed to signify the destiny of that pony, like a snapshot representing some essential part of that pony's life. When you've met the kind of monsters I have, you quickly discover just how deranged those destinies can be. When you're born to raiders, live as a raider, and die as a raider, that's the kind of mark you get. I don't blame others for running when they see my mark. It'd be straight up stupid to sit them down and get the full story behind it before making a judgment. No offense.
None taken. I am not a smart pony. But of course you can't just judge a pony by their backside. If you were really bad news, my assistant Homage would be reading my obituary on the air tomorrow.
You're sweet,
Why thank...
but not as sweet as that adorable mare.
Okay, I should have expected that. She's the personable one and I'm the recluse. But, back to your cutie mark. When, and more importantly, how did you end up with such a graphic image to represent your destiny?
Well, as I said, the leader of the Smile Squad was basically the toughest nag in the group at the time. They were quite showy about it too. Remember when I said that they wore a crown before? That wasn't a figure of speech. The motherfucker wore a crown. It looked like it started out as a buffalo skull or something. Then, somewhere along the line, a fallen leader happened to be a unicorn, and the new one, a particularly racist earth pony. So, he decided to saw the horn off of the body, and nailed it to the top of the helmet.
Yikes. I feel like a lot of these raiders could have been designers or fashionistas in a different world.
No kidding. That tradition continued on, too. If the dead leader were an earth pony, his or her tail would be attached to the helmet instead. When I was a filly, there must have been parts from over 24 ponies, and 1 buffalo, on that crown. A fitting symbol for everything they stood for and celebrated, I guess. Being the most physically threatened pony in the group, and wearing this unimaginably scary helmet of death, the leader of the Smile Squad basically got anything they wanted. That included lots and lots of chems. Most of the raiders are junkies, so half of the fight for power is for control of the drug supply.
Might as well round out all the vices.
You don't know half of it. One of the leaders, when I was young, killed his predecessor. Decided to celebrate by opening up the main stash, and OD'd that same night.
And this has to do with your cutie mark? Because...
Oh, yeah, sorry. That's the other thing about chems. They tend to melt your brain, even once you've gone clean. You never really get that edge back.
How long have you been clean?
Wow, let's see. Coming close to 20 years now.
That is a real accomplishment. Drug addiction is not an easy thing to shake. It must not have been easy.
It's an everyday battle. The thirst is always there. Especially when your first taste of it was on your mother's tit. I don't think anyone grows up normally anymore. But to be born into a raider clan, it's hard to imagine much worse. From infancy, you have to fight and scavenge to survive. Your chances will vary based on how much your mother gives a shit about you. In the case of my mother, I'm lucky I even got breast milk. You're mostly entertainment for the gang as a whole. They lock 2 of us up in a cage together and leave us there until one knocked the other out. We'd be left to eat whatever scraps were on the floor after a meal. We were a bunch of runts that posed no threat to the adults. But that didn't stop them from treating us like punching bags whenever they felt like. Sometimes, a kid would pay the price. The ultimate price. Because its parents stepped out of line, or pissed off the leader somehow.
That's horrific. That you would have to go through all that as just a filly.
You think that's the worst part. It's not. A lot of us envied them. Remember when I said that the leader treated the group like his own harem? Yeah. That wasn't limited to those of age.
Oh, Celestia.
One day, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I was going to fight and hopefully die. I was hiding in a shack when I heard him calling my name. He was walking slowly, prowling around the wreckage of the old schoolhouse where a lot of us lived at the time. When he nudged open the door of the tool shed, I jumped from the top shelf and drove the sharpest piece of metal I could find straight down through that fucker's leg. We were both so startled at the blow that I was able to bolt past him and escape into the woods.
And that was the last you saw of him?
Thankfully, it was. Turns out he ripped himself away from the makeshift blade and hobbled back into Ponyville Library, which was the main lair for the Smile Squad. But before he could reach any kind of medicine, an opportunistic pony sliced his throat, and the circle of death continues.
So you were able to get away at least?
I was, but that didn't mean my life turned into sunshine and rainbows. Those first few months were the hardest of my life. I was barely 8 years old, alone, in one of the worst areas of the wasteland. The one place I knew and was familiar with would be a suicide to return to. So instead, I had to face the unknown.
Where did you go?
Nowhere at first. I acted more or less on instinctive to survive. I scavenged for food when travelers left a campsite. I got really good at using my magic to tear apart food containers to get every last bite inside.
Did you ever approach them? Ask for help?
Not really, no. Because at that time, I had never met a good pony. Every adult I ever known was a threat, in one way or another. Then, there were the other foals. You know how they can misbehave when they're in their formative years? Normalish parents try to reverse that and set them on the right path. But when those instincts aren't softened, when no one cares to instill society, or morals, or the idea of intrinsic value into them, things get bad, fast. By age 4, I was getting injured more by fillies my age than adults. The more they wanted us to fight, the more we wanted to as well. That is how raiders are really born. Which is why raiders seem to get worse as time goes on. Every time the cycle happens, we lose more of ourselves. Now, they're not much better than the feral ghouls. They've reduced themselves down to being just like the other monsters of the mega spells.
But that doesn't mean there is no hope, right? You were able to run away.
I was able to get away from the Smile Squad and my junkie mother, sure. But just like how you can't just stop a baby manticore from being a manticore, didn't mean I wasn't still a raider. It wasn't long until I felt confident enough to move beyond scavenging and start robbing ponies outright. This thing is a confessional, isn't it?
Well, to be fair, I'm not divinely certified, but I'm here to listen just as much as I talk. And this segment probably wouldn't exist without inspirational stories like yours. You were saying you started mugging travelers for food?
Food, water, medicine, weapons, anything useful. It was the only thing I knew, the only thing I'd been taught, how to be a raider. As I got older, the crimes got worse. It wasn't long until I made myself a decent living along the highway of south of Manhattan. There was this old opera house that no one go near. Rumor was it that it was infested with bloodwings, which was true enough. But I had gotten really good at magic, and really smart about hiding and striking at just the right moment. I used this old officer's sword, pre-war, quality metal, and really sharp. It took me a whole day, but I was able to root through the ruins and slice their throats one by one. After that, I had a home no one would come near, perfect view of the road, and enough leather to keep my body at 100%.
You took on a pack of bloodwings? By yourself? How old were you?
I was still a teenager. You'd think that was kind of skill I could be just a trapper, live off the land without bothering any pony. But that somehow never occurred to me.
How long did it go on like that?
Too long.
What changed?
It was late afternoon, sunset. It was the middle of winter, and it had begun to snow. I was perched where I always was when I noticed a group of ponies set up a camp behind a rest stop. Their campsite fire was hidden from most of the highway, but not from me. I had a perfect view of all of them from behind. There were 8 of them. 4 were huddled close to the warmth, and the others were standing off to the sides, watching the alleyways that faced the road. It looked like they took turns pulling this large 4-horse cart. A lot of the major courier groups will transport goods in numbers, so they don't have to make as many trips. It drew more attention to them, but that was less risky than one stallion doing it alone 8 times. It wasn't just any cart either. Even though they'd scratched off the logo, I could tell from the wheels that it was a medical wagon, which meant whatever was inside was either a treasure trove of chems or something equally valuable that they kept in metal containers. So, I moved in for the attack.
Same as the Bloodwings?
Same as the Bloodwings. The first dumb buck walked away from the group to take a leak. He didn't have a chance. I was then able to get the next 2 as they were circling the building. The 4th one finally caught on and lured the group. They started yelling and calling for the first 3. They ran all over the place looking, but they never saw their buddies sitting on the roof. After clearing the others, the last one had jumped into the cart. I flung open the door right as she threw a hoof at me, but I caught her arm and got her in the throat. I thought she had a terrible form, like some novice new to the game. Didn't she know that you can't be weak? That you have to learn to fight if you're going to survive in this world? Without another thought, I walked past her and found the precious cargo that they were transporting. She was a foal, not even a year old. Just laying there in one of the storage bins. She was wrapped up in blankets, clutching a teddy bear with a missing eye.
What did you do?
I stood there, staring at her for a while. She started squirming when she left the cold air, and started to whimper. And all at once, I started crying too. I'd never seen anything so small, so precious, so innocent, whose whole life I had completely destroyed. I held up spending the whole night there, keeping her safe and warm.
Oh, now you've got me crying.
Turns out that the wagon wasn't a courier team at all. Father, grandfather, uncle, aunt, 2 brothers, a sister, the mother, and 1 little filly. They were a family. You could tell just by looking at them. Beneath the jackets in the winter barding, they all had bright emerald green coats, and each had a cutie mark related to wheat harvesting. I had to kill them all. Despite everything I'd taken away from it, that little foal had given me something so valuable. She had shaken me to my core, forced me to look at the sum of what my life had become, and gave me the chance to change. Instead of preying on those who had to make that long journey to Manhattan, I started protecting them. I would still sit at my perch, as I always had. But this time, I would make sure that they had made a safe passage. If any pony was attacked, I would help them out. I'd spend most of my life destroying the lives of others. I had a lot to make up for. I cleaned up the opera house and set up the escorting operation. It would be better than just gun-for-hire mercs. Battered's bodyguards would help ponies travel safely, as guardians to wherever they needed to go. I met some good ponies over the years, teamed up with those I only wish I could be. There might not be a lot of us, but we do what we can.
I couldn't have said it better myself. You see, ponies of the Wasteland, this is the point of everything. It doesn't matter what you might have done in your past, you can still become a positive force. Whether you protect travelers from possible harm, bring an uplifting voice to those who might need it, or even something as simple as being good to your fellow pony. You can bring light to this darkness that we call home. It's going to take all of us working together, doing what we can, and helping those who need it. But, if everyone does their part, we might even bring the sunshine back again. And if you don't believe me, I encourage you to tune in for a few more episodes. In the lives of others, there are lessons we can all learn from. Before we go, Battered, what happened to the filly?
Well, when you are scavenging through the wastes and find something truly valuable,
you just can't let her go.
Every story must come to an end. I wish I could tell you more. We've had our sadness and we've had our fun, something we can't ignore. And though we may fly to the east and the west, and distance may keep us apart,
I must say, it's nice having a friendly face here with me.
Yes, it is. I wasn't sure if it was going to work out, since scheduling can be hectic in this line of work, but I thought it's something the audience might enjoy, because she's the mayor that started all of this in the first place. Isn't that right?
oh, just admit it. You missed hearing the sound of my voice.
I really did. That's why I made sure you got your own microphone. How are you doing, Battered Blade?
I've been doing well. Things are business as usual for Emerald and I. I wouldn't be able to run Battered's bodyguards without her. She's the best girl a mother could ask for.
I'm glad to hear that. Is she back at the Opera House?
Yeah, I just gone to town a few days ago. I like to check in on the Manhattan branch on a regular basis.
So Battered's bodyguards run people back and forth between New York and the Opera House?
We can take ponies other places as well, but that's the main, established route, yeah. The Opera House is close by this big turnpike where a bunch of other freeways and railroad tracks meet up.
I know where you're talking about. The first highway that leads to that junction. That's how I reached Manhattan originally, by walking the road that follows the shoreline.
Yeah, that's the coastal highway, the route we usually take. Wait, so you walk that road by yourself?
Well, yeah.
Damn, you're one tough mare. Why am I here again?
Well, because I don't want Amber to have to constantly be on alert or watching the door. No need to run a switchboard and hold a gun if she doesn't have to. Plus, I remember some pony complaining that she didn't get enough airtime on the first episode of Confessions of a Wasteland Pony.
I mean, I don't know. I would have talked more about Emerald or something. What's been going on in our lives since adopting her.
Well, I figured with the new arrangement of the off-site broadcasting station, we could also hear the occasional traffic report from you, what the safety is like for all those traveling the coastal highway, since you probably know it better than anyone.
Yeah, I could do that. I see so much crazy shit day to day. It'd be nice to not have to repeat myself so much with each escort.
Just admit it. You miss talking to me.
You know, there is a short story I can start off with. This just happened to me on the run last week.
Go ahead.
So, Emerald and I had just finished breakfast, and we were cleaning our guns, as everyone should, every morning. Always make sure your weapon is in good working order before going out into dangerous territory.
Is this going to turn into some kind of public service announcement?
Kinda. So, we're having breakfast when these two ponies walked in. One of them was a young mare, even younger than Amber here. But unlike Amber, she was a real waif. Didn't look like she'd seen a battle or gunfight in her whole life. The buck that walked in with her said they have some kind of job to do that's going to be really risky and wanted the mare taken to her uncle's house in the city. Although she didn't say much at first, the girl was trying to fight him on it. She didn't want him to leave. but he looked like he was in a rush, and he kind of pushed her off his leg.
Clearly some tension going on.
It wasn't really her decision at all. He plopped down a big ammo container full of caps for payment, with like a 30% tip. He said to make sure she was safe, and walked off. Just like that, we were alone, and Emerald and I were just staring at this young mare that had been dropped on our doorstep. I asked her what her name was, and she sheepishly said, Daisy. I asked her who that buck was, and she said he was her father. Things seemed really off to me, though, so I had to give her the talk. Daisy, are you being held against your will? Are your father or uncle keeping you captive for any reason? Have they hit you? Have they touched you?
Oh, goddess. Are those kind of questions necessary? Has that kind of thing happened before?
Unfortunately, it wouldn't be the first time. Certain gangs will try to use us like a trafficking operation, shuttling their property from one place to another. But that is not what we do. We are not slavers. We are bodyguards who use our skills and experience to help ponies and get them safely through dangerous areas in the wasteland. Because of my own past, I have a pretty good eye for this sort of thing. I can usually tell just from looking at this mare that something is going on. If things are fishy, we will take them to any number of different places. We keep a list of connections that can help us shelter these poor ponies whenever a gang tries to pull something like that. We've gone into firefights over it, but we saved a lot of ponies as well. By this point, most gangs have learned, but a few will still try to trick us.
That's just horrible.
Luckily, in this case, the situation wasn't like that. Once I asked her those questions, Daisy's shyness disappeared and she gave us more context. Apparently, she grew up in the small mountain town. Pretty much everyone in the town worked in mines digging out rare metals and other things they could trade. After her mom died, she became the homemaker. So, as I thought, she didn't really get out much. Then, a few weeks ago, a rumor reached the town about some huge motherlode of pre-war stuff that no one had reached yet. So, getting caught up in scavenger fever, pretty much the whole town packed up to travel to the location to claim it. But the motherlode was surrounded by dangerous territory, so they were sending the mare to her uncle's house, where the father could come home for her later.
Did you believe her?
Yeah, it wasn't the whole story. She sounded like she was trying to hide any details about this motherlode for the sake of her dad and the others. Make sure they were the ones to get to it first. But, after cross-examining her, I was pretty sure she wasn't being abused in any way. She was just this scared, shy mare, petrified to be out on her own in this scary wasteland.
Well, that's not as bad as it could have been.
No, it wasn't. And in a way, that's exactly what we're here for. I assured her that we were the best at what we did, and since I was heading to town anyway, I would take her myself. And just like that, we were on the road.
So, what are the benefits of traveling on the coastal highway?
Well, in a lot of ways, it's a nice, short, simple route. We travel between the shore and the small mountain range that follows it, so you bypass a lot of the problems that pop up on other highways leading into the city.
So, if it's safer, why do they need you in the first place?
It's safer than other highways because it isn't as much of a haven for gang activity. There aren't a lot of places to create any kind of permanent settlement, so the raiders that do pop up on the road are usually loners operating on their own. Like I was, a long time ago. In fact, one reason I chose the Opera House even back then was because it was near the old turnpike, right before the highway split off in different directions. Once you're on the coastal highway, you're bottled up between the mountains and water until you reach New York.
Interesting. I'd imagine a lot of ponies don't take the path for that reason.
A lot of ponies don't know about it, but, like I said, the ones that do are aware of how any lone gunmen are out there, just waiting to prey on travelers. A long time ago, I promised myself that I would escort one pony safely through that corridor for each one that I had made a victim.
But if I recall, Emerald told me you already paid off that debt threefold.
Maybe, but I would never stop anyway. The journey is pretty simple. A normal trip only takes about 4 days of walking. Leaving at breakfast like we did, we would have been in the city by sunset on the 4th day.
But I'm guessing because you're telling the story, this didn't turn out to be a normal trip.
That's for damn sure. So it's pretty much expected that you'll bump into some pony on the highway, but it isn't always a threat. Occasionally, you'll just bump into a regular traveler or a small team, like a family. When that happens, we sometimes end up traveling with them, adding to the numbers to help keep an eye on each other. It usually isn't a problem because, not to brag, but I'm usually a good judge of character.
As you've stated twice now.
I'm just trying to make the point. Because one other type of character we run into on the road are couriers. Now, without mincing words, I don't like couriers. I think a lot of them end up in that job because they're a little messed up in the head. Like, they can be very distracted, or won't talk to ponies, or just be downright crazy. There are a few good ones, but most of them act like they've been shot in the head one too many times.
I think we get the idea.
So, on the 3rd day, we bumped into this courier at this resting place I sometimes stop at. Just like us, he was resting his hooves for 5 minutes and refilling his canteens from the small pond. Now, like I said before, I usually don't like couriers because they're a bunch of quiet sociopaths. But this guy was much different from the norm. In fact, he was a real chatterbox. Someone who'd probably do well on your show. Pretty much from the moment we walked up, he started talking to us. He wasn't a colt, but he wasn't also that seasoned either. He was probably in his mid-20s and looked kind of skittish to be out on the highway. Ironically, he was actually comforting for Daisy, who went right along with his conversation. She could pick up how uncomfortable he was to be on the road too, and they sort of bonded over that.
Interesting.
All 3 of us continued walking, and I mostly just listened to the 2 of them talk. When I'm escorting someone, I'm on the clock, and my number 1 priority is keeping them safe, so I was mainly keeping my eyes on him. He didn't exactly say what he was carrying, but he was very protective of his saddlebag. He kept it clutched tight and tapped it every once in a while to make sure whatever he was carrying was still in there. At the time, I figured he was still a young courier trying to prove his worth to whatever caravan he worked for, and wanted to make sure the assignment went off without a hitch. It wasn't until we set up camp that night that I had a change of heart.
Oh, really? He ended up showing his true colors?
Not exactly. He wasn't threatening to us. Quite the opposite, actually. At the campfire, he admitted that he was glad he bumped into us, because he was afraid he'd run into some creature called the Red Reaper.
The Red Reaper?
Yeah. He made it sound almost like an urban legend. The ghost of some dead buck that was hunting couriers, seeking out the one who had killed him or something like that. Kind of a standard fireside ghost story. But then, he mentioned that he had seen the buck a few days ago and had just barely gotten away. This wasn't a ghost story anymore. This courier was being targeted by someone, and now we had stepped into the crosshairs with him. Well, shit, I said to myself. I have to get Daisy away from here before this Red Reaper character catches up to him. As soon as the courier fell asleep, I shook Daisy awake, and we quickly packed up our stuff. But as we were tying up the last saddlebag, I heard a twig snap.
It's always trouble when the ghost story comes to life.
Naturally, I whipped my sword out with magic and had my assault rifle shouldered. At this point, Daisy was scared and was covering her mouth to keep from screaming or crying. I scanned around the area I had heard the sound. We had set up camp under a highway overpass where the coastal road passed over a small forest with lots of hills. There were still a lot of petrified trees all around us, so I was looking over all of them while keeping Daisy close behind me. That's when we heard the courier yell and turned back around to the campfire. The courier had been pulled out of his small tent and was being held tight in the left arm of a large, armored buck. While he wasn't a ghost, like the courier had said, he definitely lived up to his name of the Red Reaper. The buck that stood before us was fairly tall and slender. I suppose it could have been a skeleton inside, or more likely, a ghoul. He was wearing a strange kind of armor I'd never seen before. The chest piece was made out of matte black metal plates, but had white hoses circling around to the sides, making it look like a rib cage. Two of the hoses near the top were connected to a gas mask, which made up part of the helmet he was wearing. On that helmet were two glowing crimson-eye panels. I couldn't see what was behind them.
If there was anything behind them, it could have been a robot.
If it was, then that thing knew how to dress the part. On top of all that, the Red Reaper wore a long black cloak that covered most of its body and had a hood that draped over his head, so the crimson-red eyes stared out from the black abyss. Only the muzzle of the gas mask was visible. The arm wrapped around the courier was covered in dark gray panels connected to a brown undersuit. His right arm, however, had a sickle attached to it, like it was some kind of weapon built into the suit. The blade of the sickle was placed tight against the courier's neck. He was petrified, and barely got out of his last word. Help. In a flash, the sickle sliced through his neck like butter. With a blank expression, his head rolled to the ground. This pushed Daisy over the edge, and she let out a blood-curdling scream. I started firing at the Reaper, but he darted quickly out of the way, disappearing into the forest of petrified trees. The last thing I saw was the bright red sickle that had been stitched onto the back of his cloak.
So, he didn't attack you?
No. Apparently, he really was only after the courier. When I walked up to the body, the courier's saddlebag was gone. The Red Reaper had taken whatever cargo he was transporting.
Was Daisy okay?
Yeah, she was fine. She was traumatized and had pissed herself, but otherwise okay. After a shock like that, neither of us were thinking about going back to bed, so we just kept walking through the night and ended up in the city the next morning.
How strange. So you'd never seen this Red Reaper before?
I never even heard of him before. This courier was talking about him like he was some urban legend, but Daisy and I saw him with our own 2 eyes. And now I want to know more. If any of you out there have any information about this guy, please pass this message along to one of the Batted's bodyguards.
Or you can contact me and we'll deliver the message as well.
I don't know what this guy's intentions are, or what exactly he took from the courier, but he was definitely very threatening. I want to know as much as I can about him in case he shows up along the highway again.
We will absolutely be on the lookout for any news. That's what I'm here for. But perhaps we've kept our guests waiting long enough. This show has reached the point where more and more stories are coming to me from all over the place. So now it's become an exercise in lining them up in an order that you, the listener, might enjoy. Because one thing that's become very apparent is that with every new soul I come into contact with, I start finding similarities, shared experiences. How the wasteland is not so big that we don't begin crossing similar paths. So with that in mind, tonight's guest is none other than a Steel Ranger, but coming from a quite unique place in the wasteland. Welcome to the show, Paladin Sandstone.
Thank you, DJ Pony. I appreciate you having me here. It's a pleasure meeting your staff as well.
The pleasure is all ours, soldier boy. You fill out that armor well.
Thank you, ma'am.
Easy, Battered. Don't scare him off. Although as a Steel Ranger, I'm guessing you don't scare easy at all.
Then, the leader, when I was born, Elder Pumice, was the first to encounter the Great Arrows.
Ah, not those fuckers.
Who are the Great Arrows?
They're a raider gang that have these little pocket clans all over the wasteland, but have this insane loyalty to their leader. So because they're all over the place, they give that self-declared deity piece of shit a far reach of power. Hence the name, Great Arrows.
By the end of the day, 124 soldiers were dead. It was the single greatest loss of life in the history of the Guardianship, even greater than the 98 traitors who were executed.
That's quite damaging. But a group of raiders was able to take down your soldiers in power armor?
Oh yeah. These damn arrows have a wide assortment of weapons. Every time I've stumbled onto a group of them, there's always one guy who has a gun just as big as mine.
We were truly happy, truly fulfilled for the first time in our adult lives. It was the best day ever, which means we got a bit drunk ourselves. And as a result, got caught up in the celebration.
Is it just me, or does that sound like a euphemism?
Definitely a euphemism. But you wouldn't be mentioning it if it weren't relevant. So what happened?
Well, we had left the main party going on in the mess hall and had only been gone for 10 minutes when Star Paladin Turquoise found us in a compromising situation.
No, you don't mean...
We were being intimate.
You were caught with your pants down?
Oh my.
The stupid switching yard was supposed to be empty. Everyone gets away with it there. I'm almost positive that he was following us.
And waited for just the right moment.
Well, as you can imagine, we were both shocked and horrified. Carmina snapped her armor back together faster than I ever seen. She was blushing so hard I thought she turned a different shade of red. The worst part was the look on Turquoise's face. He was grinning with that same conniving smile he got after winning an argument. I just knew we were in trouble. Once my armor was closed, we just stood there waiting for his judgment. He started with his usual sly tone. Knight Carmina, Knight Sandstone. I know our recent victory has caused quite the rush of emotion all around, but this is not how a normal brother-sister relationship is supposed to work. Carmina was still blushing, but her stoic expression had returned. We knew we deserved whatever jabs he wanted to give us, so we stood at attention like good soldiers.
After being naughty soldiers.
But in the end, I don't know what's worse. Is it better that I die? That I kill myself to pay the price? Or is it better that I live and continue to suffer with the knowledge of what I've done?
I guess we can't answer that for you. But one thing I do know for sure is that in the meantime, you're always welcome to be with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That does mean a lot to me.
And if we do find out any information about Fuel Rod or TikTok, we will pass the message along to you.
I'll keep my ear to the ground also. I travel quite a bit myself, so I'll ask around as I try to find out more about the Red Reaper.
Now, as Homage has mentioned earlier, we have quite a few guests sitting down with us tonight, so why don't we continue the reintroductions? How are you doing, Battered Blade?
I'm doing good. Life has been mostly normal. Emerald's birthday is coming up, and I'm trying to find the right gift for her. I might have to talk to Miss Rosepetal once we're off the air.
Of course, dear. Anytime.
A few weeks ago, you were telling us about this mysterious Red Reaper you had run into on the highway. Do you have any more information about that?
No, not really. I've been asking about him, and those two others Paladin Sandstone was talking about. But so far, I haven't heard anything back.
So not much of a traffic report this week.
Sorry, that's all I've got right now.
That's alright, because we actually have an interesting tale from another old friend of ours. And when I say old, I mean old. Welcome to the program, Dr. Strawlung Greenshift.
It is good to be back, Mr. DJ Pony.
I hope you don't mind sharing a microphone with Battered. I think we've literally run out of them at this point.
Not at all.
Now, Battered, I believe you've met our glowing friend.
Yeah, during the construction. What's up, Doc?
And trust me, I am just as surprised as you that she stuck by an old thing like me. I am a very happy stallion. In fact, now that I think about it, we're only a few years away from our 200th wedding anniversary. It would be quite foolish to quit now.
Damn, you take monogamy seriously.
There's gotta be some kind of record there. What would a 200th anniversary even be? The 50th is gold, the 60th is diamond, so...
He was so caring and thoughtful. It was one of the many reasons I loved talking to him. Aside from his gorgeous ruby eyes that felt like they were looking directly into my soul.
Whew, it's getting warm in here.
Yes, it is. So it sounds like the two of you were becoming close. Although, wouldn't that be fraternization? Getting just a bit too friendly for the comfort of your superior officers?
As I was saying, I was to become the captain of the first ship of its class. It was named in tribute to Princess Luna, the RES Blue Moon.
Wait a second. I know that name. Do you mean this Blue Moon?
Oh, no, you have that song?
Of course I do. This is a classic.
Oh, please, shut it off.
You're blushing.
I didn't know this was based on a real ship. So, was this rolled out as a propaganda piece for the new bombers? I guess that would have worked out because the song is all about finding love in the air. Wait a second. Is this song about you and Chrysanthemum?
Maybe not intentionally.
Well, shoot. I guess we can't call it propaganda if it really works. So this song probably followed you around everywhere.
My encouraging crew would play it all the time or hum it whenever Chrysanthemum walked by. It made it easy for me to figure out who was cleaning the toilets that day.
So you were able to select some of your own crew, I'm guessing?
I was. Besides having Commander Chrysanthemum as my lead navigator, most of the bridge officers were sailors we'd gone close to on our ships and missions. Which meant many of them knew about us. Those interlopers. But, of course, we knew about each of them as well. So there was a bit of good-natured rubbing we had with each other.
So the song still leaves you with mixed feelings.
Oh, I've just heard it so often I will completely lose focus if you keep playing it.
I won't. So what did Chris think of the song?
Oh, he was the worst. He couldn't do it often, but he would hum it at just the wrong times, exactly when he knew I would react to it the most. Times that we were alone. Maybe he was talking about your blue moon.
He sounds like a keeper.
Yes, well, he's lucky I never threw him overboard.
At least you had Chrysanthemum as a shoulder to lean on.
Oh, absolutely. I would never have accepted my promotion to captain if I could not bring him with me. It is true we had become lovers, embracing in the shadows, but Chris was so much more to me. He was my best friend, my confidant, my lighthouse on a stormy night. In the good times and the bad, I would always find him standing right there beside me.
That's very hard to find, no matter the age or season, to have someone you can walk with on that great journey, moving past every crossroad of life. It's something worth treasuring, something worth fighting for.
And throughout the fighting, he would always be there to guide me. Quite literally. All else aside, he was a fantastic navigator. He could guide us by the stars alone, if we were ever forced to.
So he had skills beyond just being a good, significant other.
Oh, he was wonderful. In so many other ways. The, whole package, so to speak. Let's just say he knew how to navigate all the right territories.
Whew, it's getting warm again.
The reactor had been breached into the crash. In fact, I was still on the bridge. I was staring at the wheel of the ship bent and hanging to one side. I tilted my head up to see what else was around me. That's when I found myself looking into the soft black air of Chris's mane. His eyes were closed and his head slightly bowed. He was not awake. But despite my first thought, he also wasn't laying on top of me. Instead, he seemed to hover a foot or two above me, his legs hanging loosely as though he had been trying to grab hold of me. I looked at him curiously. How could he be hovering when I am lying on my back? Then I felt something cold drip on my face. It was a trickle of blood coming from the wound on Chris's head. It reminded me about that first blow he took. I looked down between our bodies to see if he had any other injuries. My mouth hung open as I was filled with absolute dread. One of the grey cross beams was sticking out through Chrysanthemum's stomach. It was pressed through his body completely. It extended my 2 feet, then pierced my own belly, shoveling deep into my insides. I began to shiver violently as the pain caught up to me, and I realized I could feel the beam passing through my back.
Oh dear, goddesses.
We had been impaled. The crossbeam had skewered us both, keeping us suspended above the bridge deck. Chris had dived on top of me to protect me from any falling debris, but it was no use. The thick metal rod pierced our bodies. His blood was trickling down into the massive gash of my exposed organs. I could think of nothing else to do, so I screamed. I screamed at the horror and the pain until my voice gave out. The pain was overtaking me. The darkness began closing in again, but before it could consume me completely, the bright light returned. It was a headlamp. I was staring into the emotionless element of a steel ranger.
Oh, thank heavens.
You could see your own exposed organs? That sounds unfathomable. I can't even picture the pain or dread of that realization. It must be an absolutely horrible way to die.
Oh, trust me, it is. I've seen raided gangs like to impale creatures as a method of killing. They would stick someone on a spiked pole and wait for them to die. Heck, they even make a game out of it. They try to guess how far down you would slide before finally giving up the ghost. It is an agonizing, painful death. Once the initial shock wears off, you wake up several times and suffer every inch as you're slowly disemboweled, witnessing every piece that's pulled out of you.
I guess it was lucky I was found so quickly then.
So how exactly did this reagent work?
Colonel Baker showed me right there. A mustard yellow gas poured into the room the ghoul mare was confined in. As soon as the fog touched her skin, I noticed the mare start to sweat. But she wasn't sweating like she had been playing at the beach. A disgusting yellowish green water began to drip from her. It looked like a combination of the mustard-yellowed cloud and the glowing green of her blood. It was hard to tell at first because her body was already burned and scarred, but the reagent was causing horrible bubbling boils to form all over her. It was like she had been placed in a furnace. She was burning and oozing and melting right in front of me. The poor creature began running in circles, thrashing about, trying to escape the fog. She began growling louder and louder, the sounds becoming even more unearthly and terrifying. Finally, after 2 agonizing minutes, she dissolved away completely, leaving nothing but a murky puddle and a pile of bones.
Just the bones? Who did you say was making this stuff?
The colonel said the Equestrian Army Chemical Corps was developing it with this Ivory Laboratories company he described. As he turned away from the armless skeleton, he looked at me. "Did that seem familiar?" he asked. "Familiar?" I repeated, staring at the lifeless bones. "No, I've never seen anything like this." "I'm surprised you haven't noticed by now," he said, smiling to himself. I said our project was a tale of 2 chemicals. The reagent was the sword. Then he held up a mirror. And the biotype accelerant was the shield. This is when I first saw the brilliant blue glow in my eyes. "And the glow will fade eventually," he said. "Since you've worked near reactors, you should understand that what you see is just a different type of radiation. A light given off as a crystal cools down to a stable compound." I glanced back at the fishbowl my oof had been in. "That was the same gas?" "Yes, it was," he said. "Your glowing eyes are simply a side effect. Your body is ridding itself of excess radiation and harmful toxins. As it cleanses itself like a biochemical fire, a bit of light is given off as well."
Well, at least you don't need a pit-buck lamp to get through dark hallways.
Jeez, good thing that gas didn't melt your whole leg off. He could have tested it with a bit of hair or something.
Yes, he was clearly trying to make some kind of point. But not only to me. I noticed the 2 girls at the door, with the flamethrowers and the hazmat suits. Both of them were watching the exchange intently. And above them was a security camera that captured the whole thing.
Nothing like going through a medical exam being watched by a camera.
"Is the incinerator heavy?" I asked him. "I trained with a standard machine gun battle saddle in boot camp. Let's just say that heavy weapons weren't my specialty." He laughed at this. "Oh, you know it's not that heavy compared to the undersuit." Ranshan unsnapped a part of his collar and tugged on the black suit. At first I thought it was just cloth and plastic for comfort and fire protection, but as he stretched the collar I could see some grey layers in the middle of the cloth. He said his bodysuit had a special battle weave inside it. It's basically like wool, but the threads are made of these metallic fibers that weigh 10 times more. It's almost like old-fashioned chainmail for swords, but way more advanced. If it's hit by a bullet or struck by something that's part of the battle heave, it hardens like a shield and absorbs the blow.
Now that sounds like great fashion to me. If only we had a pony who knew how to make great clothing.
Are you talking about me?
Possibly. It could be a worthwhile venture, and you'd probably sell a lot of it.
As if I'm not busy with enough other projects. Do you know how many floors this tower has?
Yeah, shut up. Besides, I'm next in line. Rose Petal and I are making ourselves some new dresses for this year's Winter Ball.
That's true. She did ask me first.
I'm just saying it sounds like there could be some potential in learning how to make your own battle weave.
Meh, I don't know. Sounds like Gold World bullshit to me. What, are they marching in organized columns through streets too? No one fights like that anymore. I bet you a bunch of the assholes have stumbled into raided traps over the years, and their metal pajamas did nothing. Sure, it might stop a few bullets, but I bet they can still break their necks in a hole, or get latched in a bear trap, or get burns and internal bleeding from a mine. Raiders come up with so many unique and wonderful ways to kill ponies that they probably just slow you down.
Yeah, I don't see much of a benefit over conventional armor. Any kind of energy weapon or laser blast will probably pass right through the fibers. This metal threading sounds like it's hardened from mechanical force, not heat nor light. At least the steel plate would absorb the energy and melt before you do.
Okay, never mind. That's what I get for trying to discuss Wasteland fashion with a bunch of battle mares.
You should have stayed quiet like me.
I frankly did not care how effective the armor was. As if I wasn't strange enough among them, I was walking around naked. I was willing to take anything.
Yes, despite being a sailor, you were the one that was going commando.
One of the males took me aside while I was suited up with a similar uniform to what they were wearing, with the battle weave and everything. It had a few differences, like it was designed for another purpose, but I was happy to have it. I felt like a part of the team, not some strange male they had resurrected from some icy crypt. I slipped on the blue undersuit and pulled on the white coat and black boots. It was when I was trying the bootlaces that I realized what the difference was. My blue undersuit and the different white coat were not airtight like their coats and black undersuits.
Well, yeah, if they were going to melt you, they would have already done it with that bullshit fishbowl thing.
She makes a good point.
Like I said, I was just happy I fit in a little bit better. Along with the other recent discoveries, the lab seemed to have triggered its self-destruct even before we reached the spell matrix. We believe it may have been another new security measure, the kind of thing that has slowed our progress these last few years. It seems many of our ivory laboratories would rather see their treasures destroyed than be put to use once again. Security measure? I thought to myself. He said the reactor had just broken down before.
Oh, that's right.
The colonel went on. The one exception, though, is none other than the headquarters of the company itself. No matter what we've done to try to get inside, the headquarters has not tried to self-destruct. However, it also refuses to let us in. The entire facility has been flooded with the reagent, and all of our attempts to drain the chemical have been useless. Even more frustrating, there is some kind of signal blocker being broadcast, so we can't communicate with those that enter inside. All of those who did enter facility never came out, and we have no idea what happened to them. I suddenly was understanding the message that I was in danger.
That's for sure. I mean, why not just send you into a mysterious chemical laboratory from which no pony ever returns?
I wanted to protest, but I thought I'd let the colonel finish first. We believe the reason for this is that the reagent is so thick in the hallways that it has somehow been able to permeate the seals on our maximum containment suits. Because of that, we need some pony who has become immune to the reagent, who won't be affected by it at all. It would be just like walking through a room of yellow smoke, knowing that it is our mission to protect Captain Peaks while she goes inside to recover the spell matrix from the facility's server room. The colonel was finally done talking, and they were all waiting for me to speak.
So, did you say no thanks and get the fuck out of there?
As much as I wanted to, I knew I couldn't. There was only one thing I still cared about in the world, and they were my only ticket to finding him. With my own incinerator battle saddle secured, I was ready to enter.
Was the suit as heavy as you imagined?
No. Ranchon said he had to get used to the weight, but I had been lying motionless for decades. You would think my muscles would have been atrophied, but luckily they hadn't. In fact, I felt stronger than ever. I've always been in shape, but I could feel much tougher muscle tone than I remember before.
One day in the wasteland, and she is already a badass.
I'm not trying to brag. It is the truth. I was feeling damn good, and I had the determination to match. The door opened quite quickly, and I stepped inside. The car began moving, and I descended down into the basement levels. When the door finally opened, I was horrified and pressed my flank back against the elevator wall. In front of the elevator were over a dozen bodies of dead chem troopers. All of them lie motionless on the ground, their suits looking deflated around their bones and remains. I looked at the body closest to me and saw a bullet go through one of the legs of her suit.
So much for the metal pajamas.
I didn't know what to do. Her words sounded so genuine, so convincing, even through the artificial speaker. But I still had my doubts. "How can I trust you?" I asked her. "I've never seen you." She thought about this for a moment, then said, What if I could show you that they can't be trusted? Okay, I said. The robot's visor went to some kind of different screen, and I saw it broadcast a radio frequency. Instantly, I could feel all my joints lock up as the blue undersuit tightened around me. The metal strings and the basil weave were constricting me like a snake, holding me in place. Well, what have you done? I sputtered out, barely being able to move my jaw. You have healing abilities beyond comprehension, but they still gave you a suit of armor. It was never to protect you. It was to protect them. In case you challenge them or try to escape, they will broadcast the signal and incapacitate you until they can lock you away somewhere.
I knew that guy was a piece of shit. Use you like some kind of chess piece, almost melt your arm off, and put you in a high-tech straitjacket? Fucking asshole.
So there was a reason your suit was blue and theirs weren't.
Like the naive little fool I was, I thought they were trying to match my hair color. Elf turned off the frequency and the suit loosened. I immediately took it off and tossed it aside, feeling frustrated and betrayed. She must have noticed this and tried to console me. It's okay. There's no way you could have known. Trust me, I know what it's like to unknowingly be working for the enemy. We reached the doors of the cryogenics lab, and I pushed them open, walking in ahead of the others. This was a small hospital. There was only 3 cryogenic tanks. I wiped dust off the first tank and found the bulbous, misshapen creature I expected to find. I went to the second tank and found the same thing. Then, I went to the final tank.
Which is where she found me.
I found my Chris.
No.
Freezy, sweetheart.
Maybe you should get a room. If you squeeze him any harder, he's gonna pop.
I can't even move.
Freezy, while most of our listeners can only hear, you do have a small captive audience in the studio with you.
No, my eyes are covered. Tulip, my eyes are covered.
Right then.
Are you okay to continue?
Oh, I am sorry. Reliving everything got me a bit flustered.
You're not the only one.
Well, listeners, for those who haven't figured it out yet, we'd like to welcome Commander Chrysanthemum to the show.
Thank you, DJ Pony. It is an honor being here.
I think it's easy to say that you're quite the lucky stallion. Freezy went through almost everything to save you. It must be humbling hearing her tell her story on national radio.
Humbling isn't quite the word. Do you know what I'm going to have to do to even be with her now?
Probably not as much. She looks like she's enjoying it as much as you are.
Yes, well, I'm just glad this is radio and not television.
It was definitely better than what happened to the Blue Moon. I was actually able to protect my crew this time.
Nonsense. It's utter nonsense. Freezy earned her title as captain, in every respect. She led us through over a dozen battles for more than 6 months. Nothing about what happened was her fault. None of us knew the Zebras had developed a guided tow missile. She reacted quickly when we saw the New Horizons wreckage, and when she activated the emergency thrusters, raised our altitude, that's what saved all those other lives, including mine. If she hadn't held fast to the wheel, if she didn't have such intimate knowledge of the ship to feel its every gear and piston, we all would have perished. She kept that last rudder in place, sacrificing herself so that more of the lifeboats could parachute to safety.
He's right, you know.
I know he is, but I still have a hard time believing it.
Which is why I will be here to the end of time to remind you.
Hello? Did we lose connection?
No, we're still here.
They're kissing again. More romantic like this time.
Well, it's nice to hear a happy ending after so many trials.
Aw, too bad we're not seeing a happy ending.
Homage!
What? I'm just saying, radio has certain drawbacks.
You are such a terrible influence on her.
Me? Well, yeah.
They're done now.
Wonderful. So, you were all finally free from the chemical core and its pursuit? While I have a small circle of friends whom I treasure and who enjoy teasing me on the air,
You were asking for it.
I have met some wonderful new friends thanks to Confessions of a Wasteland Pony. Come in, Amberhorn, do you?
Come on. You haven't lived until you've tried my Mountain Fire vodka.
For the last time, I don't want to try whatever screwy recipe you've concocted.
Well, then what are we gonna drink?
I'm not going out for drinks with you.
Hello? Am I interrupting?
Oh, fuck! Go back to your own microphone.
Why? I like it over here. Oh, fine.
Did we miss something?
Yeah, but it's kept me entertained for the last hour.
Ha ha. Very funny.
Come on, BB. I've got this great pad outside of town that...
Don't call me BB. You do not know me well enough.
I know you a bit. Don't you remember that?
Shut up! We're on the air.
I see what you mean by entertaining.
For the last hour.
Only because I didn't want to shoot his ass until I had an audience.
Whoa, hold on there, Battered. Don't kill him until after he tells us his story.
Kill me? Pfft, no, she's talking about foreplay. Wanna know where I'm ticklish?
Oh, you son of a...
Battered, don't you have a follow-up story to tell?
What?
Yeah, you said you had some news about one of the Wastelanders you were investigating.
Don't look at me. I won't interrupt you. I love hearing you talk.
You picked him just to torture me, didn't you?
I picked him for a lot of reasons, but he'll go on about that later. First, I'm dying to hear the latest traffic report from you.
All right. So long as he stays quiet. It was quite the trip.
To refresh our listeners, you've been investigating this mysterious Red Reaper. This masked stallion killed a courier you stumbled across on an escort mission a few weeks back.
Well, not sure if I'd use the word investigate. I'm not exactly a Wasteland private eye. But yeah, I've been trying to figure out who the hell he is, and why he seems to be haunting couriers.
You're not happy he's hunting couriers?
No. Even though I think couriers are a bunch of sociopaths, they don't deserve death just for doing their job and moving stuff around the wasteland. Perhaps I'll have to talk with them more, because apparently this is something that's been going on for a while. I hit up this one bar on the west side, where a lot of professional travelers, like myself, tend to congregate. Couriers, traders, scavengers, mercenaries, all types pass through there. Usually they are smart enough not to hit on me. So I approached a few couriers the last time I was there. After asking about a dozen of them, half seemed to think of the Red Reaper as an urban legend, and the other half believed that he is very real. All of them seemed to say that he's killed dozens of couriers for their cargo.
He wants them for their cargo? That's oddly specific.
I thought it might be some kind of token, like something a serial killer would do. When I left there, it seemed like this guy just hated couriers and tried to kill as many of them as possible. That was around the time when we had that Frozen Peaks chick here. After that, things were back to business for a while. Then, about a week ago, Emerald and I were both escorting a group into the city here.
Were you on the coastal highway again?
Yeah, our same regular route. Emerald's mark day was a few days ago, so we were going to spend a night on the town before she went back.
Went back to the opera house? Why just her?
Well, she's got a bone now. My little girl is roughly 21, so I shouldn't be surprised. But, damn, they grow up so fast. I mean, I still remember teaching her how to shoot. We lined up a bunch of cans at 100 yards and picked them off one by one. I gave her a nice bolt-action .308, a good sniper rifle. It's perfect for distance shooting, because that's the way I wanted it for her. Kill a threat before it even comes close to you. But, of course, I taught her all the other stuff too. For protection.
What other stuff?
Swordplay. I've had this officer's sword since I was a kid, and I gave Emerald a machete for her own to have and to use. But I stressed to her that it should only be a last resort. When I was a filly, I was desperate. I used the sword because it was one of my first weapons. I had gotten good with it. But fighting that close is so dangerous. You can see how many cuts and scars I have from all those years. Cuts from my own blade, cuts from animal claws, cuts from whiplashes. Quite a few of these marks came from the Smile Squad too.
So there's a very personal component in it for you.
I'd be lying if I said there wasn't. I never wanted that for her. I gave her that machete as a last resort. But before it gets to that point, Emerald has a dumb barrel shotgun to use first. If you can't solve a problem with 24 shells of 12-gauge buckshot, then you need more shells.
Not a bad philosophy to live by.
But, I mean, it was ages ago that I taught her that. Since when I found her, I made sure she can defend herself. Because, as much as I try to protect her, I know I can't be around forever. I want her to have a long, full life. Long after I'm gone. That's the way it should be.
Circling back, though, you said she has a boyfriend now?
Yeah. That part was a lot harder. After what I went through, I knew I'd end up being overbearing no matter what. So I just try to be overbearing in the healthiest way. Luckily for me, this stallion happens to be one of the bodyguards. And he knows that if he hurts her at all, that I would track him down to the far corners of the wasteland and make him pay.
As any good mother would. So that's where she is now, but what happened on this trip a week ago?
Right. So we were coming up along the coastal highway. The two of us were escorting the small family. There was the father, the mother, and a filly. She was about 8. They were traveling past Manhattan, but said they were meeting up with someone here in the city first, so that's as far as they needed us to take them. That answer worked well enough for me. I don't pry into my customers' lives. Most of what I learn, they offer voluntarily. Just chatting, like ponies do. The dad was some kind of caravan trader. He collected valuables and sold them off for a profit. Mostly seemed to have some tech stuff. Electronic parts, circuit boards, scrap metal. Nothing out of the ordinary. At least, it seemed to me. But goddess damn it, do I have bad luck sometimes. Things had been going on well enough. We were on the second day of the trip, continuing along like we always do. The halfway point of the coastal highway has this old bridge that spans a drop off along the mountain. At the bottom is this shallow harbor that probably got formed by an earthquake or something. Took a whole chunk out of the mountain, like a slice of pie. So the ponies who built the highway back in the day had to build this tall stone bridge to cross it. It's a nice marker for when we're traveling. There's a really scenic view, a nice breeze off the water, and a few blackberry vines that grow along the railings of the bridge. However, I don't like to stop there because it's also a bottleneck. You're caught out in the open and can get ambushed really easily. That's what happened this time. We were halfway along the bridge, and the filly was picking up some of the berries. That's when Emerald called to me, and we looked forward. It was him, the exact same stallion I had seen before. The Red Reaper.
Well, so much for investigating. No need to look for him if he keeps finding you.
Emerald and I stood between him and the family, our guns leveled forward. He started walking toward us slowly. "Don't move!" I shouted. To my surprise, he actually stopped. He was about 25 feet from us. Then, in this loud, booming mechanical voice, he said, "You know why I'm here."
Sure sounds like a robot to me.
"The fuck are you talking about?" I yelled back. "We don't have any couriers for you to haunt." He didn't say anything else, just stood there, looking at us. Then, I heard a voice behind us. "Just give it to him," I heard the wife say. I glanced back, and the husband had the saddlebag clutched tightly, his own rifle drawn on the Reaper. "What's going on? You've run into this guy before?" I asked her. "No," she said. "But we ran to this buck who promised us to pay a ton of caps if we transported something to the city for him." By this point, the filly was crying, crouching below the mother. "Transport what?" I asked anyone. "This," the husband answered. He pulled this thing out of his saddlebag that looked like a toaster. "Well, what the fuck is it?" I asked him. "I don't know," he admitted. "But it's our ticket to a new life. No more rummaging through old buildings, no more eating ancient preserved food. We'll be able to enjoy the rest of our lives, rather than struggling every day like animals."
That must have been a really nice toaster.
The husband stood his ground and yelled back at the Reaper. "Unless you're going to pay the 100,000 caps, then we're not letting it go."
And you and Emerald were now stuck in the middle of it.
Yeah, just my luck. So, I tried talking to the Red Reaper one more time. "Please, just walk away. We don't want any trouble." He didn't move. That's when I heard the gunfire. The husband started shooting at the Reaper. It startled both Emerald and I, which gave the Red Reaper enough time to move. He jumped into the air, while that sickle sprang out from his armor. He used it to spin around one of those old lampposts and was suddenly right on top of us. I drew my blade and caught him in the air. Sparks shot out when the sword and sickle made contact. All it did was piss him off. He stared at me intensely with those glowing red eye panels and started engaging me directly. He was fast. Incredibly fast. I could barely keep up with his swiping. I was trying to cut one of those hoses running from his chest to his gas mask. I was hoping that'd do something to hurt him, or at the very least, fog up his vision. But I couldn't even land a blow on his cloak. Emerald had her shotgun drawn, but the Red Reaper was right on top of me. She didn't have a clear shot. The mother and filly galloped backwards off the bridge, but the husband was still shooting, and almost hitting me a few times. Finally, the husband stopped, when his magazine was empty. Apparently, that was all the Reaper was waiting for. He jumped over me and rolled on the ground, looking like a living shadow with the way his cloak moved. With one swipe, he took the stallion's head off, with his wife and daughter watching.
Oh, gosh.
I was so mad. Not only for how traumatizing that would be for the other two, but the fact that I was supposed to protect him. I had been paid to protect him and the rest of his family. But we failed. Now that he wasn't on top of me, Emerald and I started shooting again. But before we could land a blow, the Red Reaper grabbed the stallion's bag and dropped off the bridge. I galloped to the side, right as he splashed into the water. Emerald and I kept shooting. I even chucked some grenades down there. But he was gone.
Gone?
He never surfaced out of the water. And I would know. I knew that road like the back of my leg. But he didn't appear along any of the shorelines.
He didn't attack the wife or daughter?
No. He didn't come back for any of us. Apparently, the Red Reaper just wanted that fucking toaster or whatever it was. If only the husband would have just given it to him. Was some pile of caps really worth dying over? Unfortunately for all of us, the Reaper was a better fighter.
It sure sounds like it.
So now it's personal. This piece of shit killed someone I was protecting. He made a widow an orphan, and he's gonna pay for that.
It must have been a long walk for the rest of the journey.
Oh, you have no idea. The daughter did nothing but sob the whole time, and the mother wouldn't even look at us. That was the worst incident I'd had in a long time, and I came away from it without so much as a scratch, which makes it worse. It feels like I didn't even put up a fight. Like, I didn't even end up bleeding to protect this guy.
I'm sure you fought your hardest, though. Plus, to be honest, it's not your fault he wouldn't give up the toaster. Even his wife was trying to get him to do it.
So, yeah. That was a terrible trip. I gave the wife back their caps, with some extra on top of it, because the Red Reaper took the husband's whole bag with all of their other valuables as well. At least I'll probably never see them again. The Red Reaper, though? I'm not sure. If couriers are trying to smuggle things into the city through normal travelers, now my whole operation has to be on the lookout. We're going to have to establish some new rules for escorting travelers, so that we don't become targets. Plus, that is not why we're here. We're not mercenaries. We're bodyguards. We're here to protect the everyday wastelander, not act like a private army. I hope this story will warn couriers from trying to smuggle things from normal ponies. It's not gonna work, you bunch of shitheads! Carry your own packages. But I just know someone else will try it. The Red Reaper will probably find out again and put us in the crosshairs. Despite all this, the coastal highway is still the safest route, so we'll probably have to keep sticking with it. I just don't want to lose any pony else over something like money.
That kind of thing comes with the territory, though. If none of the paths were dangerous, they wouldn't need you in the first place. There's bound to be a few times that you can't protect everyone.
Yeah, I know.
What about Emerald's birthday? What did the two of you end up doing when you got into the city?
Oh, so we end up going to this one restaurant off the shoreline. That pierside bistro that faces the ocean. It's one of her favorite places in the city. After dinner, I gave her a new set of earrings that I had Rose Petal make.
Did she like them?
Oh yeah, she really did. Thank you for taking the time to craft them. They were just perfect.
Well, that's good to hear anyway, that you had a nice bookend to that otherwise rocky trip.
Now that she's gone off with her own beau, you should cut loose a bit yourself.
The last thing I need in my life is another slimy stallion.
Hey, I'm not slimy. That's an offensive stereotype.
You're also not exactly a stallion.
See? I've got a wingman to back me up.
The fact that you'd survive just makes me want to shoot you more.
Well, in all honesty, you do look mostly like a dragon. Scales, leather wings, a spiked tail, 3 horns, claws. Except for walking on all fours and being roughly pony-sized, I don't think anyone could tell. Luckily, you're small enough to fit in our studio.
Yeah, I look mostly like a dragon on the outside. Except I'm a horse in all the ways that really matter. Because dragons are really fucking hard to kill. We don't get sick. If we do, it's something minor like a flu, and that only happens as a side effect of us being tired or really hurts. At times like that, dragons will literally sleep it off. They'll hibernate for a few months or a few years and wake up completely refreshed. They can sleep through whole ages that way, completely miss the rise and fall of another society, like a Griffin Kingdom or something.
Is that true for you too?
Yeah, I hibernated for over a decade when I was a kid. I completely slept through my teenage years.
I think that's something we can all relate to. But that begs the question, if you slept for over a decade, how old are you now?
37.
37? Then why the hell do you still act like a teenager?
Oh, come on, Toots. Don't hate me for who I am. Although it probably does have something to do with the age thing.
So even though you're only half dragon, you'll have a dragon-like lifespan?
Probably. I'm guessing I'll live to at least 500, unless something ends up killing me first. After a few short minutes, they were all dead. Including my dad.
I'm very sorry.
My ma was pretty messed up too. She was bleeding in a lot of places and had been hit several hundred times from all sides, doing what she could to protect my dad and me. The dragon cares most about the horde, what is theirs, the things that are most valuable to them. To my ma, we were the most valuable thing.
Of course. Any good mother would die for her children.
They ran as far away as they could from my volcano. I burned every last one of their buildings, every single crop, everything they had left behind. I burned them down until they were nothing more than charcoal.
Wow, that's pretty hardcore. But I'm sure they didn't come back after seeing that.
They had attacked your family. And you were just a kid. What else were you supposed to do? You had to do something to scare them away. To protect your mom.
I know it probably sounds horrible, but I was afraid those villagers would try again. And I was still so angry. I took the other heads and put them on pikes lining the road going all the way down the mountain. Then I took the decapitated bodies, did the same thing with all of them. 30 heads, 30 bodies, 120 legs, each on their own pack, each serving as a warning.
Well, nothing would scare off enemies quite like planting a bone garden of impaled corpses.
Once I'd set up the last pack, I had to do the harder thing. I buried my dad. In one of the sections of our cave, we have some old stone caskets, and not all of them were occupied. So I placed him inside an empty one, and carved his name on top to commemorate him. After that, I didn't know what else to do. So I went down to the lava pool and curled up next to my ma. I ended up sleeping for 13 years.
So, that's why you slept through your teenage years?
I guess I was hoping that she would end up waking up before me. That together we could move on and pick up the pieces. Continue life, just the two of us. But that's not what happened. The town I picked was a smaller group, easier to get away from if something did go wrong. On the edge, there was a neon sign showing my way into a bar. The first ones to notice me were a group of griffins sitting around an outside table. I could see the feathers raise on the back of their neck, and I could smell the fear coming off of them. With that scent, all my new adult hormones rushed through me, and I was filled with confidence.
Most creatures go to a bar to buy liquid courage. I almost feel like you're cheating the system.
There was nothing they could do about it anyway. I knew it just from looking at them, seeing how those griffins reacted, with all the subtle movements in their bodies. I really felt like a dragon. All the big settlements that had set up around there belonged to different raider clans. The big ones were the Razor Wings, a Griffin Gang, the Smoke Devils, some ponies who really played up the volcanic theme, and the Great Arrows. The Valley of Fire was considered a neutral zone. They were supposed to play nice with each other inside the valley. When you leave the Valley of Fire on either side, you move away from the Golden Stone volcanoes into the normal wasteland. That's where it's open season. Kill or be killed, raid, pillage, and conquer.
That sounds like a hard thing to achieve, getting a bunch of raider gangs to not attack each other.
No kidding. Who managed to pull that off?
It was the Great Arrows that suggested the deal. The Razor Wings and Smoke Devils each had a major headquarters in the valley, but the Great Arrows had a bunch of little settlements scattered all over the place. Rusty, who'd lived there all his life, said that the Great Arrows would have probably wiped out the Razorwings and Smoke Devils if it weren't for that alliance. There were still individual scuffles once in a while, but the gang leaders would kill their own if it meant maintaining the peace. They knew that the wrong provocation could lead to the Great Arrows overwhelming them by numbers alone.
We've heard a few stories about how effective their numbers can be.
But, thanks to that enforced truce, it made the Valley of Fire the perfect junction for all sorts of lowlifes. Raiders, slavers, couriers, mercenaries, and bounty hunters. They could all pass through, trade with like minds, and get wasted at places like Rusty's Bar. The Smoke Devils were nice enough, though, especially after I started the fire for us. It was a weird sort of camaraderie. They had really made the Goldstone Caldera part of their identity. The leader in our group even had a flamethrower battle saddle. Being a dragon, a living creature of fire, they almost thought of me like a peer. Plus, as they would explain to me over the trip, they really fucking hate the Razorwings. They were glad to not have one tagging along with the group anymore.
Now that sounds like a Raider clan. Always bickering with each other. What was their beef exactly?
Apparently, those two gangs have been fighting for control of the valley for years. The Smoke Devils told me that they had been there first, before the Razorwings showed up. But when they did show up and could fly, they set up small nests near the top of the mountains. It was hard to push them out of the area, but they kept fighting. Then, all that changed when the Great Arrows showed up. The Smoke Devils had traded with the Great Arrows before. They thought they were crazy, even by Raider standards. But they were just a bunch of small clans with some tertiary connection to their cult leader. That all changed a few years back when Great Arrows showed up all over the valley, setting up small settlements and checkpoints of their own. It almost became a war between the three tribes, but the Smoke Devils saw that they were outmatched. The Great Arrows outnumbered them 3-1, so when the Great Arrows offered a truce, they were the first to agree. As far as the Smoke Devils were concerned, the Great Arrows were at least mostly ponies, and when everything else was stripped away, they'd rather trust other ponies than griffins. On the last day of our trip, before reaching the farming settlement, we were attacked by some other raiders. When the shots rang out, the Great Arrows stopped the wagon and whipped out their own weapons. All the rage poured out of their eyes as they ran headlong towards the enemy's hiding places. I was busy burning the trees they used as cover, while the Great Arrows ran right up with shotguns and pistols. The Smoke Devils were getting some shots in with their own rifles, but the Great Arrows had this viciousness that reminded me of myself from the day my dad was killed. They just shot their way through the bodies, getting covered in blood from head to tail. Then, when it was over, I went right back to the wagon and started pulling it.
Well, that's unsettling.
They're a bunch of psychopaths. Cold calculation layered on top of ferocious animals. If it weren't for their crazy cult, they'd be just like the Smile Squad.
Hitting a little too close to home?
No, I'm fine. I just see too much of the damn arrows. They remind me too much of my childhood just because of how ever-present they are.
A lot of missions I did involve things I regret. A lot of innocent ponies died in our raids. We weren't just fighting other gangs of degenerates and scumbags. We would sack whole villages of those just minding their own business, just for some kind of plunder.
And none of that bothered you at the time?
Not really, no. After what happened to my parents, I really didn't care about anyone else. A group of otherwise normal ponies had murdered my dad and put my ma on the brink of death. In my eyes, they were all the same. All ponies were just murderers, whether or not they'd reached that point of desperation yet. I had accepted that as the natural order of the world. Kill or be killed. Any idea of morality or righteousness was just naivety as far as I was concerned. That's how things were in the Valley of Fire. The ceasefire within the valley was only on the terms that the Razorwings and Smoke Devils didn't want to be killed by each other or the Great Arrows. In those days, I truly was a dragon. In all the worst ways.
But you're not just a dragon, are you?
No, I'm not. And I would have a change of heart, eventually. But that wouldn't be for many years. The Great Arrows stay so great and numerous because they apply this same technique wherever they can. Capture, conquer, colonize. Ridgeback handed me a set of gloves which had bottles of some kind of green liquid just above the claws. The green liquid was a poison that ran through the tips of each claw like a quill tip. Just one poke through the skin would be like a manticore sting, having a quick-acting effect. But instead of killing them, it just paralyzes them. Ridgeback and the others had rifles that were loaded with syringes like tranquilizer dots. After midnight, we made our move. One of the bucks took out the outer guards, while I landed gently on one of the roofs and crawled through the window of the first building. A couple were sleeping in bed together, and were barely waking up when I stamped each of them with my gloves. Within seconds they collapsed back on the bed, not being able to move at all. Out the window I heard gunfire. One of the village ponies was able to get a shot off. I flew out that same window and pounced down on the mare that was firing. As soon as I landed on her, the claws were in and she went down without another sound. Once we were sure we had tranked the whole town, we went around and gathered the bodies in the middle. That's when Ridgeback pulled out an old army radio and signaled the Great Arrows. 4 of them gathered into the town, pulling a large wagon. It looked just like the one that Rusty had, as big as a train car. But this wagon didn't have any shelves or containers. It was completely filled with cages. They loaded the villagers into the cages, then galloped off back east, towards the valley. Once the wagon was gone, a second group of arrows occupied the town, conquering it as another Great Arrow settlement.
So you're saying they're not raiders at all? They're actually slavers.
Does it really make a difference in the end? I was as bad as all of them, and I don't consider myself a raider or a slaver.
So, where did they take the villagers?
I don't know where they take them, but I've seen ponies that I've tranquilized come back a few years later as fully fledged Great Arrows.
Oh, Luna.
So that's why there are so many Great Arrows. They capture whole villages and indoctrinate them in their crazy cult ideology. Suddenly, they have a whole new supply of loyal followers.
Something I'll never forget was the first time I met one of them. On a mission, I'd awoken this mare lying on a cot. She had a bright pink coat with a yellow mane, the saddest eyes you could possibly imagine, like she was always on the brink of tears. I stuck her on her forehead, right between those eyes. About 2.5 years later, I saw that same mare with those same sad eyes walking through the valley as a Great Arrow. I went up to her, tried talking to her, but she didn't remember me. She had that same blank expression that all of the arrows do. Like everyone that isn't one of them is just a figment of their imagination. Each time was more or less the same. It'd be a week-long round trip somewhere and back. Ridgeback kept mostly quiet while I talked with other mercenaries. We'd take down some small village of a dozen or so ponies, then the Great Arrows would haul them off and occupy the village. It was all about stealth and infiltration. They didn't want anyone dead, on either side.
What was the cost for each of these ponies?
It wasn't individual. I even asked Ridgeback about it once, and she said that what mattered was the success of the mission. They paid me 1 gold bar for every successful mission, so more or less 1,000 caps a head.
That's a ton of caps.
So you could have at least some level of conversation with her.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't impossible. She just wasn't the chatty type like some other raider chicks.
Oh, shut up.
Even though she had a few amicable moments, When Ridgeback was pissed off, no one was safe. And she was never more pissed off than the time she was pregnant.
Pregnant?
Yeah, and before you ask, no, it wasn't me. I wouldn't go anywhere near that bear trap. She didn't seem like the relationship type at all. Maybe she wasn't. But clearly she could let loose enough for one night if something like this happened. That didn't last long, though. She took care of it around the time the belly started getting in the way.
Probably for the best.
Yeah, I wasn't too surprised myself. Even still, that pregnancy turned her into the worst kind of landmine. And one mission, some dumb fucker stepped on it. Apparently it's something the griffins like to keep to their chests. Really, the more razor wings I talked to, the more it sounded like that was the reason they set up a camp in the caldera. They were trying to find their palace of gold.
Fascinating. So this rivalry with the Smoke Devils wasn't about farmland at all.
Oh no, the Smoke Devils liked the valley, because they really started making the whole volcano thing part of their identity. They were all about fire and stuff. Bunch of dragon wannabes, if you ask me. But the Razor Wings had a more driven reason for settling there among the volcanoes. Besides trying to mine for what gold they could out of the mountains, they were searching for this Naranja place. Luckily, they'd never gone far enough north to find the old village by my mountain. Not that you can find it anymore these days. After I cleared the pikes and blocked the entrance, it looks just like all the others now. Buildings I burned to ashes have blended into the volcanic landscape.
So the whole war between the Smoke Devils and Razor Wings were about totally different motivations?
Yeah, I think both of them would have fought to the death with the Great Arrows if it came to that. But it was the Great Arrows that came up with the truce.
Which is a pretty weird, not at all Raider-like thing to do.
It wasn't rare of me to get total destruction missions either. I became known to some as the Blue Death, because my fire burns bright blue.
Not unlike your mother.
Yeah, I guess not. In her case, it was because of her scales, though.
What state was she in while all this was going on? You said at one point in time she made friends with ponies. Would be a bridge between them and other dragons.
Yeah, she was. It was quite a bit different than what I was doing. But then again, trusting ponies is how she almost died in the first place. After over 2 decades, she was still asleep, hibernating in one of our lava pools. I'd check on her whenever I returned to the mountain. Her wings had healed up long ago, along with the rest of her wounds, but for whatever reason, she was still asleep. I'm pretty sure she saw my dad die. Maybe she thought I was dead too. Maybe that's why she didn't want to wake up.
Is there any way to tell when?
Not really. It's sort of like a coma. A dragon can only come out of it when they're ready. Occasionally they can be forced awake if they're under attack or something. But there was no way I was gonna try something like that. So I'd just wait. I hadn't seen her wear one before. I'd seen her with a pit buck sometimes, but never one of those. Either way, she knew what she was doing with it. She toggled with the dials and buttons until I could see the outline of a map. Then she finally said something else. "And the codex is on here?" "Yes," Governor Farthing said. "And the deal still stands?" She responded, more empathetically. He smiled, then glanced from her to me. "Of course it does. 12 gold bars apiece for everyone who makes it back." He clapped his hoof on the wood counter, and one of the arrows pushed a pallet of gold bullion up to him. There were easily over 100 gold bars on there, about as high as a stack I had been building at home. Farthing continued, "And I do hope you all make it back."
So that's what it comes down to? The great arrows are led by a fucking banker?
He wasn't just a banker. Obviously, they were using the gold for the influence and to pay mercenaries like us. But Governor Farthing had absolute command of those great arrows. They weren't getting paid beyond whatever food kept them alive. They were deeply brainwashed in devotion to him. Or more accurately, they obeyed him as an emissary to His Majesty, Lord TikTok. Too many bullshit titles.
So you never saw TikTok?
No, I didn't. Governor Farthing was the one in control there. I couldn't smell it on him, per se, but I could smell it on Ridgeback. She was very afraid of him.
Interesting.
We crept between the 2 rows of trees, staying focused on the bungalow cottages near the river. They were very fancy little houses. Each looked like they were made for a family of 5. But considering the demands of the war, they could probably house a dozen each. They were also in incredible condition. There were no broken tiles, broken windows. The walls still had these very well-defined shapes. You know, like the fancy diamond patterns around Tin Pony Tower.
Neo-Deco architecture.
Sure. Really swanky little bungalows. Quite the cozy village. The big-ass artillery gun must have intercepted all the mega spells, because they were in great shape for being centuries old. Once we'd reached a certain point, there were a few of the bungalows behind us. If they were full of something, or someone dangerous, we were gonna get surrounded. Ridgeback motioned to Crossroad, the zebra, to go scout one of them. He glided quickly through the street and pressed himself up against the wall of the nearest bungalow. He then flipped up this mirror on his leg armor and glanced through the corner of one of the windows. After a few seconds, he cracked the rear doors of the house and slipped in. It was a very long minute as we waited to see if anything happened. Finally, he peeked his head through the door and motioned us to join him. One by one, we crossed the street between the tree line and the bungalow. Inside, the house was fully furnished and completely undamaged. In the middle of the living room were several large luggage containers scattered across the floor. A few of them had been opened, with a few clothes hanging out. "What is it?" Ridgeback asked. "Upstairs," Crossroad answered, leading us up the stairwell along the wall. We followed him past 3 smaller bedrooms before reaching the master bedroom at the end. On the bed inside were dozens of skeletons piled on the mattress.
Skeletons?
More or less. Some of them still had some skin, but most of them had been there for a while. They were covered in some very familiar-looking armor. I looked at Ridgeback. Looks like we found out what happened to the great arrows that came before.
"Not surprising,"
Breakbeak scoffed.
"The dull-eyed fools have no tact when it comes to fighting. Everything ends up breaking down to brute force."
"Would that be brute force with each other, though?" Crossroads said. He grabbed the leg of one of the skeletons and held it up to be visible. There was a deep etch carved into the bone, like it had been sliced with a sword.
That doesn't sound like the behavior of a hologram.
No, it doesn't. Looking at the other skeletons, I saw they were all covered in bone-deep slashes like that.
That either takes a lot of strength or a sword with some really strong metal. If you're just trying to kill someone, you just need to nick a few arteries and they're gone in a minute. They must have really wanted those fuckers dead. I can't blame them.
Blame who, though? I don't think holograms can carry swords, can they?
No, they can't.
Which meant our initial hologram theory was out the window.
As touching as that story ended up being, I think the way in which we were able to hear about you is even more touching. You see, listeners, we've known Battered Blade for a while because she has worked tirelessly for many years escorting ponies into the city, and often right into 10 Pony Tower. Now, while 10 Pony management can be a bit stuffy, it has allowed us to get to know Battered, and I myself wanted to show my appreciation for what she does, which is how she found her way into a small interview segment. How long ago was that now?
About 4 months ago.
Well, to me it feels like 4 years. I don't know where the time flies. Hopefully we'll have a few years to come, too, because the beautiful thing about friends is that with each new friend, you have the chance to make many others. Without Ditzy Doo, we might not have met Dr. Greenshift. Without Amberhorn, we might not have met Homage. And without Duchess Rosepetal, I might not have met a beautiful, untapped music library.
Untapped?
And without Battered Blade, we wouldn't have met Paladin Sandstone, whom she bumped into at a trading post, or our incredible guest of the evening, the half-pony, half-dragon, Diamondback.
Do you want to tell them? Or should I?
Oh, stop it. Well, I mentioned before, with that Daisy chick, that sometimes slavers try to trick us into moving slaves around for them. They threaten the ponies to stay quiet, but we're usually able to get the truth out of them. When we were able to help some pony, we will smuggle them out of the city through a network called the Airlift, started by a Pegasus buck named Rainstorm, who is a much better pony than me or Diamond.
But his reputation precedes him in courier and mercenary circles, so we both were able to make contact with him after our respective redemptions. Once BB saves some poor mare, Rainstorm can smuggle her to any number of locations where she can live out a new and happy life. The little settlement outside my volcano is now open to those who need help. Suches is a great doctor for the town to have. He was able to fix Ridge back up with a prosthetic leg, and she's taken up a new life as a living stick of dynamite. She can blast holes in the rocks of mountainside better than any of us, probably even me. So she makes it much easier to terraform land, or mine for minerals and gems.
It's very charitable of you to open up your land to settlers again, after what happened to your parents.
Well, as much as it still hurts to remember my dad, or my mom, I had to think back on what they'd done when it really mattered. Long before my father was in the picture, my mother offered a land to those settlers in their time of need. That was all her, the dragon, being the kind of dragon that more dragons should be. And it's been worth it. All of them are doing so much better, living so much happier lives, and it fills up my life to see them every day. Now I'm able to help a more deserving group of ponies, in a new way. And this time there's some better barriers in place. I still left the mountain sealed. Only dragons can get inside to our cave, where my mother's still sleeping, and I'm the only one that knows the way.
So if the two of you are on opposite sides of Rainstorm's airlift network, how did you end up meeting?
Well, she handed off some mare to me at a drop point, of course.
The buck I normally meet up with was caught up in other business, so I had to take the girl directly.
And I'm so glad he was, because I got to set my sights on Battered. And
he has been this way ever since.
And since this is one of the only radio stations that has signal up in the Goldstone Caldera, we listen all the time. So when I heard the angelic voice of this little saber horse on the airwaves, I had to make contact to tell my own story, especially if it got me over here for drinks.
Fine. Okay. Fine. We will go out for drinks.
Oh, yes!
Well, that's an even happier ending.
No, there is not going to be a happy ending.
We'll see about that.
That's definitely something we'll follow up on next time. Since all this happened, though, which you said had been just under 2 years, have you gone back to work for the Great Arrows at all?
Oh, goddess, no. I'm done with all of them. I'm genuinely sorry for all the lives I've destroyed with the damn toxin, and ponies over to be brainwashed.
Has Governor Farthing tried to contact you? Tried to send anyone after you?
He might have tried, but I never returned to the Valley of Fire after the Naranyavia mission. I had my little cave outside of town, which I was able to clear out when no one was looking, but otherwise, never looked back.
So you don't know what the Great Arrows are doing there, or what they did to the Smoke Devils or Razorbacks?
I hear rumors occasionally.
The Razorbacks were pretty pissed about Breakbeak, and even though they disowned her,
The Smoke Devils weren't happy about Ridgeback dying either. But neither side is in any position to do anything about it. As far as I know, their awkward truce is still in place.
Well, sometimes it can be hard to make a decision that burns bridges like that, but for so many personal reasons, it was clearly the right thing to do. However, it is nice that you didn't set off a war over it.
There might be a few good ponies and griffins in the bunch, but they're still raiders. They are still horrible gangs that do a lot of terrible things. I just hope more of them find opportunities to leave, one way or another.
No doubt about that.
Tonight's episode is someone we've already been talking about for a few months now. Someone who's earned quite the reputation among courier circles. Come in, Amber. Can you hear us?
Are you fucking crazy?
I see Battered's taking this situation well.
I've tried to reassure her, but understandably it's a bit of a tricky subject.
I want this thing out of here. You haven't seen what I've seen.
Quiet down already. If I were going to kill you, you'd already be dead.
I'd like to see it try. I'll blow you to pieces.
I'd like to see you try, since you clearly weren't trying at all the last time.
Fuck you!
Whatever the two of you do, just don't cut any panels. I really don't want to rewire anything.
A little background may be in order. About 4 months ago, Battered told us about her first contact with our guest, the Red Reaper. Since then, the Reaper has become a bit of a recurring feature as Battered looked into what kind of effect he's had on the Wasteland communities, around Manhattan especially. Every courier from here to Canterlot seems to have at least one ghost story to tell about our guest.
Fear is a powerful tool. Fear of death allows me to accomplish a lot more than just quietly killing those that need killing.
That's quite the reputation to foster.
You of all people should understand that. You do the same thing with this unceasing broadcast. Sway giant sections of the wasteland toward one opinion or another. Your silver tongue like 1,000 swords, making 1,000,000 cuts deep in the minds of those listening.
I try to use this station to help anyone I can, to entertain and inform about the day-to-day things going on out there.
Please, this transmitter is just a weapon of a different caliber, although I give you credit for using it very effectively. I hope to do the same myself.
A weapon? I think that is a crass way of describing what we do.
You probably do think that, which might be for the better, if pathetic. That way you're not lying to millions of ponies, you're only lying to yourself.
Now listen here!
Can I kill him now?
You couldn't kill me if you wanted to.
Children, can we remember the point of this?
Yeah, what the fuck is the point of this? You want to hear his side of the story like this is some kind of courtroom?
Not exactly.
No, Amber's right. While we could argue the merits of your opinion, at least it brought you here to the microphone.
Definitely the strangest interview request I've gotten so far.
Wait, he reached out to you?
That he did. Perhaps you'd like to share with the audience what led you here.
Well, for starters, I don't normally listen to your station. I find your voice annoying, grating on the ears.
It's gonna be a long night.
However, when I was confronting a courier a few weeks ago, she mentioned that I was the one the radio was talking about. After a few days of listening, I heard your interview with the dragon and the opening bit with your bodyguard friend. She seems to have stumbled into my mission and tried to stop me from finishing my task. Although, by associating with the dragon, it seems you've gotten a lot closer to the truth than you think.
So, to point out for everyone, the only episode you've listened to is the one with Diamondback.
Yes. I have my own holotapes if I want to listen to music, and I have no interest in your other episodes. But as a means for me to put more pressure on the Great Arrows, I'd do anything.
Wait, what? This is about the Great Arrows?
Of course it is! Have you actually paid attention to what's going on out there? Did you not hear your bastard dragon friend talk about how many ponies he's enslaved to their will? The beast must be slayed, and you can only slay it by removing its head. TikTok must die, even if it takes 1,000,000 cuts.
Then what does this have to do with couriers?
Before we continue, do you mind removing your helmet? The voice filter would be pretty hard to listen to for several more hours. Plus, you were so kind as to do it for Amber a few weeks ago.
Yeah, fine. Whatever.
There. Is that better?
What the? You're a chick?
It's not like I wear this suit to flatter my hips.
No, but like, you're not a robot or ghoul?
No, I'm not. Not that it matters, because I'm more dangerous than both.
It also helped not to refer to you as Reaper this whole evening. Would you tell us your name? The name you told to Amber?
Yeah, call me Carmina.
Carmina? Where have I heard that? Wait, you?
Battered. No spoilers. We have a lot of ponies listening who'd very much like to hear this story.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, yeah. Carmina. It's not that weird of a name. If you have a problem with it, take it up with my dad.
That might be a good place to start, actually. Tell us about your parents.
Oh, goddesses.
Come on, origins are important. Why did your father name you?
After our parents were killed, an elder Feathertail had been executed. Sandstone and I were a part of the ranger force that finally captured Outpost Zeta. It was on the northeast side of the valley, the last outpost we had to take. There were great arrows living in the mining town outside of it. We burned them to ashes, using chemical fire weapons to melt them and the buildings. Another division used this giant rail-mounted machine gun, something that was designed to take down airships. But they used it to blast away any great arrows they got in their sight. That was the happiest day of my life. We had avenged our parents, captured the outpost, and essentially gotten engaged.
Essentially? What does that mean?
Well, the details aren't important, but it was when our commander officer let us change our assignment to post within Castle Alpha.
Sure sounds like there could be some good details there.
Agreed.
Anyway, it was our chance to start a family, to have a wonderful life shared together.
But that didn't happen.
No, it didn't. I heard his voice again, telling me the story. It was reassuring, but also hesitant. I didn't know why he was so hesitant. It was like he had a bad feeling. That's when I understood. I reached the mouth of the Blood Canyon to see the exploding reactors that had caused a total collapse of the canyon walls. The train wasn't gonna go through there at all.
Hold on, you said that Sandstone told you this?
I know what it must sound like. Are you spiritual at all? Did you ever believe in the goddesses or anything like that?
I think I'm more spiritual than even I'm comfortable with. The amount of things I can't explain otherwise seems to mount with every passing year.
Well, after the cave-in, after he was crushed, it feels like his spirit has never left me. That he has stayed with me like a guardian angel.
Don't you mean guardianship angel?
Shut the fuck up! The guardianship would have been a blessing to the wasteland.
Whoa, okay. Sorry.
You can call it whatever you want. You can say that I'm crazy, schizo. But Sandstone saved my life that day. Even when I failed to save his. He stayed with me, speaks to me, comforts me. He was a part of me. And he stayed a part of me even in death. I wouldn't even contacted Amber here if he hadn't told me to.
Really?
Yes. He keeps me alive for these past 2 decades. Helped me live through more close encounters than anyone else has divine sanctions to survive. He's the one that crossed swords with you on the bridge. I wanted to decapitate you. He just wanted to distract you long enough until we could get our hoofs on the package. So you better be damn glad he's still with me, or you would have been chewed up by the sea monster 2 months ago.
I'll be sure to write him a thank you note.
I was able to aim more carefully and blow through his other front leg too. He fell on his back, screaming in pain. I landed on top of him, pressing one of my hooves into its shoulder hole, then knocking off its helmet with my other hoof. He had a deranging look in his eyes, just like the rest of them. "Where did you come from? Where is he going?" I yelled at him. He didn't answer. I stepped down on his shoulder again, which he answered with another scream. Then he quickly bit down in some of his inner lining of his armor collar. Foaming began filling his mouth from the poison. In my own rage, I had forgot that they never allowed themselves to be captured. They had hidden poison pills on them, often inside one of their teeth or something like that. I switched my ammo to buckshot and lined it up the barrel right between his eyes. I turned his skull into stew meat. There was even a pink flash as the pellets sparkled against the floor of the train car.
That must have felt good. That smelled justice anyway.
I hadn't really processed that I was somewhere new yet. I was still on the edge of the desert, especially after seeing Outpost Zeta still sealed up. I thought this place was as empty as Thunder Valley had become. But that's when I saw something clawing at the door of the train, trying to break into it. I leveled my siege gun and shouted at him, "Hey! Stay away from there!" The girl turned around and looked at me. She was all by herself, wearing some kind of tattered rags. She was really skinny, like she was stung out on some drugs or something. She didn't have the crazy hallowed look in her eyes like the great arrows. She was still crazy though. She lunged at me with a pool clue of all things.
A pool cue?
Yeah, like the billiards, like she was swiping it from a bar or something. I wasn't in the talking mood, so I shot her.
Probably wouldn't been much of a conversation anyway. Those drug fiends can get pretty messed up. Almost no different than feral ghouls if they've burned up enough brain cells.
That was my first interaction with a Wastelander that wasn't a great arrow. It wasn't a good one. Didn't leave a good impression for who else I might find out there.
Hard to argue with that experience.
The 5th level was the bottom of the outpost. Just like all the other outposts, there were a level that was specifically for special military assets. The things like our power armor or Project Wendigos. Like in Outpost Kappa, one aisle had a large supply of the stored medical supplies, including enough painkillers to attract every junkie in the wasteland, if they knew what was there.
At least it probably isn't mixed with paint thinner like some of the other things creatures might inject themselves with.
Pain thinner?
Or worse.
They had continued to use her as caravaner, even after enslaving her. As you know, their cutie marks never go away or change. They still have the same talents as they were born with. Those talents are just corrupted or misused. That's why the Great Arrows attack the way they do, with blind rage and full-on assault. Most of them are not tacticians or fighters. Most of them are farmers or blacksmiths. Regular ponies that has been enslaved to TikTok. And something about the way their mind control works took away some of the finer skills they might have had if they were an assassin or a bounty hunter. It dulls them. While they become easier to control, they lose a lot of their uniqueness and utility. It's why creatures like the dragon are not the first indoctrinated. And in similar ways, it is why the governors are not turned like the others. They seem to obey on their own terms, or under some kind of great threat, like the mare with the broken horn. All the other arrows are made to submit, so when they are told to engage something, they throw themselves at it, being driven by adrenaline more than anything.
So it's not so much years of living in a warrior cult going through advanced training than it is tapping into basic fight-or-flight instincts.
Yes, exactly my point. Their tactics amount to little more than hitting themselves with 2 syringes of Stampede.
2 doses of Stampede at once? Sounds like a recipe to stop their hearts.
It often does, just not directly. When these arrows come after us in Thunder Valley, they were able to cut them down in waves. Their only real advantage is their numbers. It didn't seem like she remembered him at all. The longer I talked with him, the more it sounded like the reason they sent her to interact with him is because of his connection to her. She wasn't volunteering to see her brother any chance she got. She was assigned to him, without much care or understanding one way or another.
That's sick. To manipulate the poor guy's emotions like that?
I never knew for sure, but it is the most likely explanation. If I gave up on ever trying to stop them, I wouldn't have any other reason for living. I wouldn't even make a display out of it. I would simply turn my siege gun on myself and end it.
Can't say I'd do anything different myself. Except for all the innocents you've been killing alongside them.
Battered?
I get it, Carmina. I understand the having a life purpose of wanting to avenge your family and not wanting to live otherwise. But what about the lives you might be destroying in that wake? What about that mother and filly I had to console after you killed their father? When exactly did you start slaughtering couriers with this Red Reaper persona?
I'm getting to that. And they are not innocent. The buck pulled a small shotgun, but the arrow was holding firm on his own rifle. He started reciting a speech almost like a pre-war constable, telling the buck to let her go and that attempt rape was a capital offense. The whole deal. Then, when he was done talking, the buck was about to answer when a shotgun came out of fucking nowhere and then blew the buck's head off. And 2 other arrows moved in from the other side of the valley where the shot came from and howled the buck off. The mayor thanked the one who has been done the talking and returned to her shop.
Huh. Well, at least they have some sense of law and order.
All of their governor territories are essentially a military dictatorship with TikTok on the top, and the governors handling a lot of their regional affairs. In the middle of the town, they had built an obelisk made out of stone, some kind of carved quartz. On it was a selection of about 24 crimes and their equal penalty. A fine in a different caps amounts, whiplashes, or death. While I hated them as the army that had destroyed my home, and those like Corduroy hating them as the slavers they are, many others didn't hate them at all. The other ponies that lived among them, and all the other trade caravans that passed through, really liked the Great Arrow settlements because of the level of protection and safety they provided.
Yeah, as safe as you can get before being hypnotized into becoming one of them yourself.
And that was the thing. They seemed to try to conquer the big settlements rather than just killing off or turning all of them. They would only capture and turn smaller settlements in places they wanted to occupy. When the dragon talked about Winnie City, all the settlements around the Mint building were captured, so they could control the area and protect their seats of power and the gold in the Mint. They seemed perfectly content to leave the Smoke Devils and the Razor Wings alone. City Hall was a fortress, and only the Great Arrows are allowed in and out, with one exception. He took me to the marketplace one morning just before sunrise. A giant covered wagon was rolling quietly through town. It was clear that they didn't want to make a scene. Corduroy said they chose that time of the day to bring the least amount of attention to the townsfolk. The wagon was filled with newly captured slaves, ready to be turned into great arrows.
And the townsfolk not seeing it makes them easier to forget about. Out of sight, out of mind.
Right. So I looked more closely at some of the other head coverings in the storage inventory and found something that would work very well. It was called an eagle mask, adverse environment gear for light evacuation.
That's what Harvest Orange was talking about in one of the recordings, right?
The thing that created the ghosts of Naranja Via.
It was. I didn't know at the time, though. I only knew what I could read on the equipment manifest. It was apparently something they were trying to mass-produce during the war. A mask you could slip on to give you simple bare fire radiation protection and help you escape to safe areas. The mask itself is a talisman. You can see the glyphs and the symbols carved all over the inside. When you breathe, the air comes out, turns bright orange from the glow of the runic letters. It purifies the air of all sorts of contaminants, especially radiation.
A heavily purified air with no trace smells that a dragon could pick up on.
Probably. That was only one of its functions, though. The air also provided for some kind of healing properties, which had stitched me back together more than once. It also heightens your perception and makes you faster. I could gallop extremely quickly, react to bullets or melee weapons far beyond what I can normally. And finally, the mask can repair your clothing or armor too. Essentially restore them to what they were the first time you put them on. Like some kind of manifestation of its preserving in time. Maybe that's what it does for the wearer too. Preserve a version of you in time, restoring you back to what you were.
So you're telling me you had an ace up your sleeve? What say we strip down to what our moms gave us and spar again?
Seriously?
Battered, please, set up your naked sword fight another time.
My offer stands.
Anyway. Once the last one had finished, a low-pitched, throaty humming began rising from the floor. Then the higher volumes filled in as well. All the arrows started chanting in repetition. The phrase they kept coming back to was, "Shed the cloak, silence tongue, cleanse the soul, ears of one."
What the fuck?
It wasn't much, but it was enough. Because of the other traders would sometimes talk about how good one of the arrow settlements was to another. The leader of one of them, who they seemed to like quite a lot, was Governor Moreland of the Sunset Castle. But that would be the last bit of information I got. Before even realizing what had happened, I felt a sharp, painful edge cut deep into my neck. I gasped, and a poof of orange smoke came out of the hole in my throat.
Shit!
I could really feel how slowly time was moving as I pressed my hooves against the hole and jumped backwards in reaction. My sickles were drawn, but I couldn't see anything. Whatever it was cloaking itself, like me. I heard Sandstone's voice again, to the right. I twisted the blade and felt like something glancing off it. A sword of some kind? Quickly, I fired some rounds from my anti-material rifle in the general direction of the sword. 3 of them went missing, but the 4th one made contact with something and ricocheted to the floor. I could see a mare-sized shimmer of light rippling through the air as the spell tried to recover. It seemed temporarily stunned by the shots, which was long enough for me to realize that the great arrows weren't chanting anymore. My anti-material rifle wasn't exactly quiet, not to mention that the 3 missed shot punched through the wall behind the invisible mare. As soon as I heard the galloping up the stairwell, I knew I was out of options. I lifted the hoof off my throat, long enough to see the orange smoke wasn't coming out anymore.
Well, that's a relief, I guess.
But I also couldn't leave the way I came. I fired a few more shots at the invisible mare, then one shot through the window. The glass completely shattered from the constructive force, and I jumped out with my sickles drawn, catching the edge of a wall molding. As quickly as I could, which was pretty fast thanks to the mask, I scaled down to the ground and galloping north. I wasn't going to leave through the main road with all the other guards, so I took the path with my best other option. A few of them saw me ripple in the dust cloud as I ran, and a few more took shots. I felt one strike on my side, but it didn't break the suit. The armor of the stealth suit held pretty well. Once I reached the cliff's edge, I jumped again. This time I sailed through the air like a Pegasi, until splashing into the water of a small lake.
Yeah, you sure love your swan dives, don't you?
My rad meter started ticking in my ear. The lake was far from clean, and I didn't plan to stay in it anyway. Once I reached shore, I kept galloping away from Canyon City, until I was sure I wasn't followed or tracked.
And you hadn't bled out from your carotid artery, so the day could have gone a lot worse.
I didn't think she hit my artery, thankfully. I didn't know if I had been so lucky if she had. Hitting my windpipe might have worked in my favor. It was the first thing the orange smoke was touching, so it could work quickly, rather than filtering to my body to a leg wound or something. I still think about that encounter a lot. If Sandstone hadn't convinced me to try the eagle mask, I would have been dead.
Talk about your better half.
Yes. Well...
I'm sorry. I understand it's gotta be difficult to deal with.
No. I feel the same way. I would much rather have him than the silence.
So you had to face another ghost, of sorts, but at least it was enough to give you another breadcrumb.
Now was my chance to use my best set of skills. Sniping.
Woohoo! Here we go.
I lay prone on the ground and extended to the full length of the silver barrel, which extended from the dark green weapon with the black frame around it. I knew that Tombstone's bed was in her office. The whole thing was like a hotel suite. So I waited. The far side of the window where I had first shot through had been packed, but it had been over a month since then. Her guard should be down just a bit by now, and I'm sure she tried to reinforce the other windows too. My anti-material rifle might not be able to break through it anymore, but the shooting star would.
Shooting star?
Around 2 a.m., I saw her trot slowly in front of the window, probably returning from the ladies' room, or getting a glass of water. It didn't matter, because sniping was my specialty. I pulled the trigger, and a bright ball of green energy lanced forward, striking like a comet through the night sky. It made contact with the glass right next to her, and the whole room exploded with green electricity.
Ooh!
Other lights began dotting the window of the city hall. I used them as new targets. One by one, the balls of energy blasted through the windows, consumed the occupants in the surgent bolts of magic. The great arrows had brought war to the guardianship, and had a lot to answer for. I fired a few more dozen rounds until the last spark battery I had was empty. My last shots were to the main columns around the dome, causing the whole thing to crash inward. It had barely survived the Great War, so a few of the target spells were more than enough to shake its foundation. The Christian flag at the top was the last thing to fall down into the council's chamber below.
I'm surprised an equestrian flag has survived up there for so long.
So you basically just blew the fuck out of the building?
And killed Tombstone in the process. If I couldn't get to TikTok, killing a few of his governesses would be satisfying.
What about the spell matrix? Was that destroyed in the process?
I don't know. I couldn't get close enough to check the runes. After some time had passed, I felt safe enough to return to the streets as Crescent Wrench. Despite everything I destroyed, and Tombstone being dead, as several merchants seems to confirm nothing much had changed. The obelisk with TikTok's law on was still standing in the middle of the town. The top and a half had been broken off, but a new section had already been carved in and placed on top of it. The colorization of the quartz was different, but TikTok still ruled, and the numbers of great arrows made that fact clear.
Even killing the governess didn't change anything?
No, not that I could see anyway. Unfortunately, there was one more casualty I hadn't anticipated. Jeannie had been guarding the City Hall building when I leveled it.
Oh no.
Corduroy couldn't handle her death. When I checked in on his shop, it was still locked. I was the only one with a key for the room he had lent me. I found his body in a chair in his room, holding a picture of his whole family, with their parents and Janie when they were still very young. He was also holding a pistol.
That's a sad end.
He had truly and wholeheartedly believed that there was some way Janie could have been saved. But after she had died in the city hall, that chance was gone.
I mean, shit. The arrows have killed how many creatures? You can't just keep them all locked up and hope there might be a cure someday.
What about what Dr. Greenshift is doing for the ghouls? Keeping them locked up rather than killing them?
Well, yeah, but come on. It's just not realistic. If you're surrounded by a bunch of ferals in a cave, it's not like you can put them to sleep with a taser or something. Same for the arrows. There was no way to know that Jeannie was going to be in the building.
I could have talked to Corduroy, but in all honesty, I had completely forgotten about her in my own quest. I didn't think she would be in the building. I didn't think it would lead to his suicide. That I truly regret. I didn't try to make any friends after that. Better to fade in the background as a ghost, a spectre to haunt the great arrows. There were lights in the windows, so I approached slowly, not sure what to expect. As I got closer to the city limits, I saw some pony approach me. I had my gun ready, but saw she was unarmed. She pranced up to me. Literally pranced, like she wasn't high off her ass on something.
Them party time mentals are a hell of a drug.
When she got close enough to say hello, I was sure she wasn't a threat. She introduced herself as Tanzanite, the mayor of Metropolis.
You're joking.
I swear to Luna I'm not. I asked her what Tanzanite was, which is when she sprung around and shoved her flank in my face.
Oh, now it's getting interesting.
She pointed to the indigo-colored gem as she had as a cutie mark and explained the Dr. Whitecoat said that this gem was called Tanzanite, so she took that as her new name. Her eyes matched the stone, while she had a light blue coat and a dark purple mane. Before I even had the chance to ask her about her new name thing, she led me to the middle of the town, where the others had come to see what was going on. Yes, Tanzanite was going through quite a bit more of the lore, but it wasn't until she started really breaking down the history of Metropolis that I was reminded of a distant memory. The thing that Corduroy had told me so many years ago about the city by the sea.
Oh, right.
I got her to be quiet long enough to ask her. I told her that I had a friend from many years ago that I had heard some pony in Metropolis had the ability to break the spell of the great arrows. Tanzanite looked excited by that, and gleefully announced it that this was her.
What? That the cure for great arrows is party time mentals?
No, she explained that she had been a great arrow.
Oh.
That declaration was enough to quiet everyone else in the courtyard. Dr. Whitecoat and Sparrowtail were both looking at her like she had broken some sacred oath. Sparrowtail muttered something to herself, and Whitecoat stood still looking grim. just knowing how Tanzanite was going to finish her sentence. "Dr. Whitecoat saved me," she said gleefully. At some point, the group won a battle against one of the Great Arrow's raiding parties. There was one arrow that was still breathing, despite having been shot in the head.
Oh yeah, getting shot in the head is totally no big deal.
It was the leader of that raiding party, Tanzanite. Normally, in a circumstance like this, they would just have finished her off, but Dr. Whitecoat, one of the newer additions to their group, stopped them. He stared very closely at the bullet wound, which had nicked the forehead just above her left eye. Then he said he wanted to try to save her, to see if he could get her to talk. Dr. Whitecoat picked up the story at this point, saying they brought her back to their encampment where he created a sterile operation room to the best of his ability. Then, with only Sparrowtail assisting, he began cutting her head open, around the wound, removing pieces of the fractured skull.
Ugh, disgusting. This is why I stick to terminals.
Tanzanite, who of course had chosen a seat next to me, was pulling back her mane to show me all the scars. They found the bullet still lodged in her head, and they found something else too. A large part of the left side of her brain was missing, but it wasn't because of the bullet. It had been removed years earlier and was replaced with a magenta pink crystal.
A what?
A crystal, like the kinds you use to make a spell matrix. It had elaborate symbols carved all over it, and what was left of her brain seems to grow over these symbols like vines clinging to the side of a building.
What the fuck?
Regardless, the rest of the group stayed in Metropolis. Tanzanite had a childlike personality and excitedly took on a self-promoted role of Mare. The group theorized that she had been captured at a young age, or with the crystal removed, this was all that was left of her.
So every one of the great arrows out there have a spell matrix in their head running them around like a bunch of robots?
Hold on. I've killed quite a few arrows over the years, and I never once seen one of their skulls crack open like a geode.
They didn't know why. Or rather, most of them didn't know why.
You know, that reminds me. I don't think we ever asked what your mark was.
Oh, well, ours are pretty boring, to be honest. Ever since the earlier days of the guardianship, initiates were usually get a mark related to what order they would end up joining. So, Sandstone and I both being rangers, his was a snow-covered mountain, and mine is a set of pink sand dunes, similar to the salt flats around Thunder Valley. The pink gave away into a normal-looking sand about 12 miles out.
Ah, that makes sense.
I'm surprised it's not a bloody sickle.
If fates were that direct, life would probably be a lot easier.
Yeah, Battered, you have to admit that your mark probably gives the wrong impression to those that haven't known you the past few decades.
Yeah, whatever. Again, I feel the need to point out that I have personally fired a shotgun into the face of several great arrows, and never once did I find a glowing pink prize inside like there's some kind of fucked up piñata.
That is because of what happened to the crystal as soon as they removed it from Tanzanite's head. It disintegrated. When the last bit of it was disconnected from her and they pulled it out, the light quickly faded and the clear gem collapsed into black ashy powder. You can see it for yourself. If you kill an arrow and cut their skull open quickly enough, you might find the black dust before it dilutes into the mess of their blood. The crystals themselves are only about the size of a gold bit. Of course, you will find a lot more of their brain missing than that. You could probably put 12 bits in the empty space that's left behind. I know. I have tried.
Ugh, lovely. Not much different than a spell matrix you'd find in a terminal.
So, this might be a stupid question, but how exactly would you stop them from making those? You put a couple of satchel charges on the side of the coastal mountains, and you'd find piles of crystals.
Well, the important thing isn't so much if you find crystals, it's what
kind of crystals they are. Certain crystals hold much more arcane potential than others. You can think of them almost like batteries, each one of them with a unique capacity to store magical energy. That's where the term ley lines comes from. In the early days, unicorn miners were noticing that caves with very pure, highly enchanted crystals seemed to lay in straight lines on a map. Only crystals of a certain purity can be used to store magical matrices, and those might only be a small fraction of all the other crystals you'd see in the mine. You have to have a unicorn with keen senses to run one effectively. Then, once you have your crystals, you can cut them to the right size and carve the matrix of spells into them to work with that kind of technology.
And then you just copy and paste that onto a new stone?
In a matter of speaking. It does take time, though. You have to metaphorically unravel the spells crafted into the crystal, like a bowl of yarn. Once you do that, you can then enchant it with a new set of spells.
So what you're saying is it's probably best just to find some new crystals.
Yeah, good luck with that. Salvaging existing spell matrices is by far the best way to go. The Great War depleted just about every major mine there was, even refining weaker crystals into stronger ones by essentially crushing them together wasn't enough to meet the demands of war.
Well, there's gotta be more super magic crystals out there. Just digging enough holes should unearth something eventually. Especially with creatures like Diamondback and the others blowing chunks out of volcanoes.
Speaking of Diamondback, how did your date go a few weeks ago?
What? Oh, fuck off, that wasn't a date. I think he just ran out of ponies willing to try his screwy alcohol concoctions.
What kind of concoctions?
Well, no menthols or anything for me. It was a blend of rose whiskey, Griffin Country vodka, and a shot of straight Everfree.
Ugh, that sounds disgusting.
I don't know. It was okay. Needed something fruity, though. Maybe a lime.
So it really was just drinks?
Must have been over a month's worth of drink, considering I just saw him the other day while walking back to Pony Tower.
What am I, his mother? I don't keep track of his schedule.
No, but Emerald does. 2 nights a week, after dark.
Since when are you talking to Emerald?
If I may cut in, she clearly fucked the dragon, so can I continue the story now?
I did not!
Yes, I think we have our answer.
The other one next to her was much younger, 40s maybe. She had a dark orange mane and a soft yellow complexion to the dried out hair along her body. She was wearing a well-tailored business jacket that was navy blue. On her lapel was a pin of the Escort logo.
Oh, I see.
It won't come as much of a surprise to your audience since you already heard the other half of the story. But carefully uncoupling the gauntlet from her leg, we were able to play some of the last transmissions she had sent back and forth with Harvest Orange. Whitecoat was interested in hearing the transmissions from the last day. They were the only ones truly relevant to what happened.
And I can get some more use out of those spectrum adapters.
Morning, honey. I just got your message. Sorry, I couldn't talk last night, but Mom is finally feeling better. We ended up going out to a nice dinner and turning in early. To be honest, I needed the sleep. The test took way longer than they should have. We should buy these ponies out. We'd run it better than the Ministry of Peace anyway. But it's over. The new rounds of med seem to really be working, and Mom is starting to get back to her old ornery self. I told you those oats would go bad. You've got to stock your fridge more often. I'll have them remove that vending machine if you don't. Anyways, Mom should be good now, so I hope to come back the day after tomorrow. I'd be happy to speak with Limeless again if you need me to. Love you.
So, it was Valencia Orange.
Harvest? What's going on? I just got the code black signal in the low band frequency. I tried phoning out, but I haven't been able to reach anyone yet. What's wrong with the transmitters? We're heading back home right now. Mom and I will be at Naranyavia. Please stay safe and call me back as soon as you can.
But they never did reach each other.
No, they didn't. We found both Valencia and her mother there, long dead and mummified from the airship crash. I could see Whitecoat tear up a bit, listening to the last messengers, but I couldn't tell how artificial those tears were.
What about those emergency masks? Was she wearing one?
An eagle mask? No, I didn't see one anywhere. Then again, it's not like we were searching every inch of the balloon. We couldn't reach the cargo hold at all, and it took a lot of digging just to get to the ship's spell matrix.
That sucks.
Whitecoat attached the spell matrix from the pyramid to the ship's spell matrix. Then he plugged both of them into the cable in his leg. The ship's battery was long dead, but since his cover was blown anyway, he used the ship's hardware and his own internal battery to copy all the data from both the spell matrices into his own body. As he did, I reminded him that I still needed more of an explanation to what was going on. He agreed and then said, "Maybe it's time I return home." At the very least, his home was away from the fucking sand.
So, wait. The Great Arrows were searching for Valencia's ship? Why?
I don't know, but the signal wasn't searching for the ship. Turns out, the call signal number was for Valencia's personal gauntlet, the one we had found on her body.
Sorta sounds like Harvest Orange is still in charge.
Both of us were stunned when we were suddenly surrounded by several dozen ponies wearing eagle masks. I didn't have any advantages on that playing field, let me tell you. They scared the shit out of me, popping out from the little houses and from behind the shadows. I had my sickles drawn, but they also had blade wraps on their hoofs armor. I was about to bolt, but Sandstone called me down. They haven't attacked yet. And indeed they hadn't. They held there on the defense, while one of them slowly stepped towards us. I focused my attention on her, but I was still outnumbered by 30-1. Then, after a few puffs from her mask, she slowly pulled it down, so it hung above her chest like a necklace. I was sure I was staring at a ghoul. Her face was horribly disfigured. All of her skin were puffy and a sickly yellow color. She only had a few patches of hair on her body, and just as few in her mane. Around the puffy section of her skin were deep and long scars that looked like they had covered every inch of her, like she had been stabbed hundreds and hundreds of times.
Yeah, that's going to leave scars all right.
Finally, when she spoke, saying simply, "Harvest," I turned towards Whitecoat in confusion, but this time she made a demand. "Mask down!" The way she said it was very strange, almost like she were deaf or something. Whitecoat, obviously a bit afraid himself, agreed. "I think you should do what she says." They led us into one of the small houses around the courtyard, where they had just thrown the bodies into the bedrooms to let them rot there. The intruders had come several times and tried to hurt them, but always lost. Then some time later the dragon had come with the others. Frustratedly, they couldn't explain how much time had passed between each of the wave of these intruders and the dragon. This is when Whitecoat asked them how long ago they had seen Harvest Orange, to which they answered, "A few months." Whitecoat was initially startled by this, but I followed him up with, "How long ago was the Great War?" To which they also answered, "A few months."
Well, that's helpful.
We weren't getting anything useful from that line of questioning, but when they showed us the bodies of the intruders, including the others that had came with the dragon, we could see the gauntlets and the other armor showing that they were undoubtedly great arrows. We also found something else on the Gruntulet. Something Whitecode called a system codex. Stable-Tec technology could be hacked fairly easily because of the workaround that got discovered after the war, and also got published in those Wasteland survival guides lying around everywhere. Escort technology is different. You can't just phrase through their networks by guessing old passwords. It requires an actual physical key to be plugged into the access port first.
Well, you can hack through a database without one of those codexes. But it takes a long time because you have to hunt through the actual lines of raw code. Trust me, I know. Although the algorithm I had to build could probably be considered a codex in its own way.
Look, I don't fucking know. I'm just telling you what he told me.
And as we heard from Diamondback, that's what it took for them to hack through the Naranja Via terminals.
And you know what's funny? That was almost a year ago. In retrospect, I think we were only behind your scaly bastard friend by a few weeks at most.
Hey, he is not a bastard! In the technical sense.
Oh, goddess.
And so now that brings us back to the present, to the birth of the Red Reaper.
I held my own for decades against entire carnivores of great eras by myself. And I'm not even by myself anymore.
What is it?
He's here.
Fucking finally.
Who's there? What is this?
Carmina?
White coat? Stop this! How could you? How could you? How could you? I don't have any pictures. You don't have any idea what he looked like.
I thought you were dead.
No, don't do this to me. I can't be dead now. Not now.
Oh God, Editors. You're not. You're both still alive.
You're as beautiful as ever.
Sandstone? Is it really you?
Boy, that was a hell of a long tease. I need a cigarette.
What's happening?
They're hugging, all sweet-like. This sure has become a real love fest of a program. Maybe I'd make more money letting you build a fucking hotel into our building, too.
Then you wouldn't have to go so far to slay the dragon.
Wait! No! I am not! That is not what I am saying!
Carmina? Sandstone? Are you doing all right?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for this.
How did you do this? How did you find him?
Well, I found him buying gum at a rest stop. So I'm the one you should be thanking, you schizophrenic sociopath.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I owe you everything.
Whoa, hey now. I think I deserve some credit for setting up both shows.
Actually, I'm the one who deserves credit for not spoiling the surprise when I first met her.
Have you been listening the whole time?
Yes. Well, almost. I missed the beginning, but heard you mention shooting the arrow at Outpost Kappa, and had to take a few minutes to see if this was real. Then I galloped here as fast as I could.
How did you survive the cave?
We were trapped. I was delirious and... I thought you were dead. I blamed armature. I threw a helmet at him in anger, but I thought it was just a scratch. I talked to him for weeks, until an earthquake created an opening. That's when I realized that he was dead. I'd imagined his voice.
Only a few weeks, huh?
I didn't mean to kill him. I just threw the helmet and...
Stop. I know you would never hurt it on purpose. I can't even describe what this feels like.
I've spent all these years killing arrows everywhere I could. I'm a bit jealous that you got to Fuel Rod first.
Where did you go? Where have you been hiding all this time?
Outpost Sigma. It's not far from here. I've mostly stayed around here on the coast because there's more than enough to deal with in this area alone.
This changes everything. I'm never leaving your side again.
Are you kidding me? I'm welding our armor together.
Well, that'll save some time.
Woo! That was a long time coming, but boy was it worth the wait. Hopefully most of you listeners have been with us from the beginning, because I've been excited for this ever since Amber told me the news. She does deserve so much credit for angling Carmina into the studio.
You're welcome.
I'm not even sure if Carmina has more story to tell or not, but that's basically what I've been keeping us rolling for.
I don't even have words left. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. You have given me my life back.
I could never repay you for this.
You are both very welcome. I think this is definitely a good time to end things anyway. We've gone plenty long enough for this evening, and we can bring you both back in another time.
Yeah, we need to let you two go to get reacquainted.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So everyone, after another incredible life story from a humble wastelander, we now have 2 lives that can pick up again from where they left off. Hopefully not too worse for wear. And it's another testament that, rather than being a weapon, the radio has immense power to bring ponies together. If tonight's episode teaches us nothing, it's that we are all deeply connected with the souls of each other. So give a tug on one of your own wires and see who you find on the other side.
I love you so much.
I've always loved you. You never truly left me.
So thank you for joining us, listeners. Next week we'll have our Rockin' Winter Solstice Ball to celebrate, but then we'll kick off the new year with another exciting episode of Confessions of a Wasteland.
What is it?
We've got a problem.
What are you talking about?
What was that?
Bar those doors!
Battered! What's going on? Amber, what's happening?
I don't know.
We need to go now. Stay close to me.
Until my dying breath.
Battered! Amber!
Somebody say something! Say something! No! No, 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 no!